Hello, Motorrad World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP with myself, Rob Portman, and as always, Paul Scott joining me. And this evening, we're going to be talking about the Cathedral of Speed, Assen in the Netherlands. Another amazing weekend of motorcycle racing in all three classes. We'll touch mostly upon MotoGP. Lots to talk about, lots to dive into. But before we get into that, just a little bit of sad news heading into the weekend for South African motorcycling and motorsport in general. The sad passing away of the legend, Mr. Motorcycling in South Africa, Simon Fourie. So wishing Donovan Fourie and his whole family, sympathies, condolences, thoughts and prayers with the family in this very sad time. And Andre de Kock as well, a very well-known motorsport journalist in South Africa. You know, I remember him covering all the races when I was racing professionally in South Africa, and it was just his love, his passion. Same with Simon, just dedicated their lives to South African motorcycle racing, and South African motorsports. So they will be sadly missed. On the Motor Rider World Facebook page, we have posted up details about their memorials and ceremonies. So again, very, very sad news, and thoughts and prayers with the families.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Yeah, condolences to both families, and two absolute icons of the motorsport, motorcycling fraternity. And just as a very small aside, many years ago, 1987, or 88, my wife and I were driving back from Durban when Simon passed us, setting that record. He was on a GSXR 1000, if I remember correctly, because he stopped, and I can't remember where. There was no freeway from Durban to Joburg. Most of it was single lane road, and he had stopped, I don't know where, to refuel. So we passed him when they were refueling, and then he came past us at again, and I don't know, 300 plus Ks an hour. So but condolence to both families and all their friends.
Yeah, both terrific men, legendary names that will that'll never be forgotten. And it was nice to see how the social media world, obviously mourned, but also reacted to the two amazing men that they were and what they did for South African motorcycle racing and motorsport.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get into the comments here. In pole position is Wade Williams in the land of YouTube. So Wade Williams, well done. You're the first man in there. And Mike Teal and his grandson Liam in second place there, also in the land of YouTube. So welcome to you two. Always first in the comments here. Great to see. Good evening. A lot to chat about tonight. Sebastian Tian Trump 6811 in the land of YouTube. Paolo Cerchetti, also in the land of YouTube. Hi there all. The season has certainly shifted a gear or two, and it certainly has. Paul, after last year where Marc Marquez ran away with it and MotoGP was kind of, people were using the word boring and whatever, we've certainly so far got the season that we wanted, and there's still plenty more to come.
Well, absolutely, Rob, and I think you and I both said it. Well, a couple of points. First of all, I think 4 races ago we said this is Bezzecchi's championship to lose. Well, he's done that, and he hasn't lost it yet, but he's trying very hard to lose it. And then a couple of shows ago we said, imagine if Ai Ogura qualified in the first 2 rows. He did last week, he did this week, and look what happened. Let me tell you, he must be, if not the favorite, he's definitely thrown his name in the hat as certainly top draw, because one thing with him, hasn't crashed this year, has the best speed at the end of a race, and he's gaining that maturity. And we've said it how many times on the show, that belief. And that's exactly what he's got. He now goes to the races saying, I'm going to win. He's not saying it like a Jorge Martin or a Raul Fernandez preaching to the world, but in here, he's a danger. If you watch him going forward and his qualifying sorted, well, but fantastic. 4 riders absolutely in with a shout to win this championship.
Yeah, I agree. The little samurai sword is sharper than he's ever been. So definitely we'll have a lot to chat about around him tonight. Dick Crosby 9520 in YouTube. Good evening, Robin. Paul, should be an interesting chat tonight. Mentioned Darren's progress in the USA. Big shout out to all the South African riders over in the USA. Matty Skoltz. Very tricky conditions this past weekend. It was rain, it was dry. Darren Binder in the super sport class had very little dry time at a track that he had never been to before, then went on to proceed to crash his brains out completely. And then picked the bike up and picked up 2 second places after qualifying 8th or wherever he was in those very tricky conditions. So Darren Binder proving his class there, as he has done all year so far. Great to see him up there. Cam Peterson in the Superbike class looked like he was on for a really good weekend, setting fast lap times, qualifying on the front row. Unfortunately, just some issues there, putting a halt to his race weekend. So not the overall weekend that he would have wanted and the team would have certainly wanted after seeing the potential that was there after Friday. And then Maddie Scholz, cannot sing enough praise about Maddie Scholz. Didn't have the race one that he wanted. Race 2, you could see it was this cut and paste Yamaha R1 they put him on. Didn't get to do one lap, didn't even know if the bike was straight, didn't know anything. And he goes and he leads the entire race, only to be passed by Sean Dillon Kelly, literally with corners to go, but still picks up second place and still leads the championship there. And then Dominic Doyle also in the Super Sport class, not the luck that he wanted. But again, our South African boys doing a great job over in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see, and all of them performing. And nice to see Shez winning again.
Yeah, Shez right up there in Master Czech Republic, and he's doing some nice travels over in Europe with his beautiful family, his 3 beautiful girls. I had a little bit of a chat with him yesterday, which was great. Haven't heard his voice in a while. Missing my best mate, but it's great to see. Still racing at a high level, still traveling around Europe, getting some riding in, and enjoying the heat wave that we've got all over Europe here with his beautiful family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, Shez is no longer a youngster, so it just shows how talented he and all of them are. But Shez is just, I mean, he's like a fine wine. He just gets better and better.
He does. He gets better and better, faster and faster, and fitter and fitter. Hello from the beautiful Garden Room. Hope certain party don't continue their mission to diss Brad. CP Buertz, Gary Granger, Ollie Moto. Good evening, Ollie Moto. Stephen Colgoxi, El Camino. Stephen Colgoxi, bad luck for him on the weekend in the Red Square, in the Sunbet ZX10 Masters Cup out in Port Elizabeth there. So sorry about that, Stephen, but I'm sure you'll be back and ready to go next time out. El Camino, Daryl Holmes from a chilly Port Elizabeth. David Hawes, greetings, Paul and Rob. Craig Hicks, Clyde Matthews, Dirk Kotzer, Wayne Taylor, Ivan Plisic, Joburg to Durban Star. Yeah, Daryl Holmes, that was, of course, Simon Freed. That's legendary, man, to do that back then. It's just to do it in general is absolutely incredible. Stephen Goldsfane, hello from New Zealand. Hello, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining in. Michael Maggot, Andre Valman, James Thompson, just evening all, just shopping, LOL, be home ASAP. Come on, James. You don't want a long lap penalty. Come on, please don't make
that could be a double long lap penalty.
It might be a double long lap penalty, absolutely. There's Sean Portman, Dominic Doyle also with a crash and a mechanical, and that issue with Cam's helmet visor in race 2, unfortunately paying due there. Joe Alves, hello, Joe. I hope you're doing well, my buddy. And Ray Stephen also joining us from South Africa. So, again, as we say every single week now, because there's so much to talk about, get nice and comfortable, get a hot beverage, a cold beverage, whatever you want to get, but get it yourself nice and comfortable, because we've got a lot to talk about, and we're going to be pulling on everyone in the comments. We want to as many comments as we possibly can get, as much interaction as we can possibly get. Hit that like button, subscribe button, whether you're in the land of YouTube or Facebook, and be a part of the conversation. Paul, let's start off again just with the South African rider theme. Unfortunately, Rishame Woodley, Moto3, didn't get to take part in this weekend's race. A big, nasty crash at that fast-flowing section that is Assen. But, injuring himself, putting himself out, and all we can do is just wish him a speedy recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rob, that's what they say about Assen. It's a fast circuit, so generally crashes are fast. I think, I hope I say this correctly, he got off lightly, having a look at the crash. Yes, he's broken his left hand or a bone in his hand. But, when you're crashing even on a Moto3, what's he doing there? 180, 200 Ks an hour. That's flipping fast. So, I hope he heals up quickly. He's got a week. I don't think we'll see him next week in Sachsenring, but we've said it many times. These guys are tougher than tough. And if there's a 10% chance he can be on the grid, he'll be there. But Rush, heal up, and we look forward to seeing you whenever it is. Maybe it's time to just say, okay, skip one race, then we've got a 3-week break. back, at 95%, days are back at 75%. So yeah, but anyway, yeah, disappointing that happened, but it's racing, and I think it's his first crash this year. He's at technicals, but I don't know if he's crashed in a race this year.
Yeah, I think at
He did with Danish,
yeah,
correct.
yeah, Hungary. He
Yeah.
was a bit enthusiastic there as well. Donnie McCall, hello from the Bluff in Durban. Bunny Charles galore, love it. Gwen Campbell as well joining us. Mark van der Berg as well, and Bronwyn Holmes and Coral Brits as well. So plenty of people in the chat here. So let's get going. Grant Furrows, guys, your thoughts on Moto3 being a one make series Yamaha? Hey, Grant Furrows, well done. Top of my list here. Top of, you can't see it because my handwriting is really bad.
You're
Top
just punting zero motorcycles.
Yeah,
Robert.
okay. Yeah. There was actually really good branding, but just at the top there, Moto3 Yamaha. It's a good place to start, before we carry on. I was going to bring it in later when we talk Yamaha MotoGP, because it's a couple of big announcements today as well. But it's a good place to start. And the big note with it, Paul, there's two things, When I first looked at it, I was like, why try and fix something that's not broken? Moto3 is great. It has been for many, many, many years since it made the change from 125cc 2-strokes to the Moto3 category that we know now. It's always been competitive. It's been great. KTM and Honda have been the dominant. KTM's been the dominant force, really. Honda have had their fair little bit of say there, but it really is a KTM dominated series in many ways. But the racing's good. Everything's great. Now, I am a little bit concerned with this. At first it looked like it was going to be purely just Yamaha engines. So similar to Moto2, where, chassis manufacturers can come in and do their own thing, and then just plug this Yamaha engine in and off you go. But now it looks like it's a complete full Yamaha package, which I don't mind. Moto2's been a successful thing, but that's an engine, with a different manufacturer, chassis and stuff. I just look at it and go, why try and fix something that's not broken?
Yeah, Rob, and one make formulas can be very good. I'm on the fence with this. If nothing else, then everything's equal. How they'll run it, I'm not too sure. We haven't got too much technicality in terms of that. At the moment, Moto3 is dominated by KTM. You do get the odd result from a Honda now and again. Do people look at it and say, but KTM are dominating, or do they just watch the racing? So does that mean if we go to a one-make formula and we see racing that's equally as good, people are just going to say, well, doesn't matter, the racing's good. So I don't know. I like the idea of the one-make engine, but then having open chassis. So you can have a Kalex, you can have a Bosco Scura, or whatever the case might be. But then do you not get a point where, for example, KTM can go and lash big cash at it and someone else can't, so they're on the back foot? It's going to be an interesting dynamic, but you're quite right. Are they trying to fix something that's not broken? Now time will tell, but it could be very good. One-make formulas can also be, especially where you lack horsepower. It makes racecraft, you're honing a skill that's going to take you up a step. And so there's pros and cons to both. I think overall, I think it's going to be very good. At no point do I think you're going to get one person dominating. Let's just look at David Alonso 2 years ago. He dominated. I don't think that'll happen. And if it does, it'll just show the class of that particular rider, because everyone will be on equal machinery. So yeah, pros and cons. I think generally it's going to be good.
I think the biggest loser there is, a couple of comments there about they're using the CP2 engine like the MT-07 and the R7, which we see race in the Women's World Championship. I just love, if you've been lucky enough to be at a MotoGP race, and certainly in the pits or in the paddock and up close to a Moto3 machine, it's a thing of beauty. It's not a production bike. It's not something that you can replicate or you have seen anywhere else. It's very much a thoroughbred race machine, that you look at. It's got the proper forks, the suspension. It really is. So if they're going this R7 Yamaha route, I hope they still keep it almost like, that prototype racing. No disrespect to Yamaha 7 or production racing, because I love the production racing, but I don't necessarily it fits in the MotoGP paddock. I want to go there and I want to look at a Moto3 bike that's a prototype. I want to look at
Prototype, yeah.
that I can't see in the Yamaha dealership and stuff. So I'm worried about that. But the biggest loser in this is KTM, because you think of KTM racing, when the whole KTM saga happened, 3 billion in debt, blah, blah, blah. KTM factory racing was always like, well, we're separate, we're strong, we've got money. And a big part of that money, actually a majority of the money, comes from their Moto3, because they lease out their Moto3 bikes. 90% of the grid is on KTM Moto3 bikes. They're losing all of that now. So all that income of spares, engines, chassis, the whole lot gone. So it's going to be a big dent in their financial situation, and I don't know what kind of an impact it's going to have on them going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rob. But going back to your first point, MotoGP is prototype. So that's what we want. It's not production based. So that part of it, I think, is something they mustn't lose sight of, the fact that, if you want to go production, and we love it, it's bike racing, go to World Superbikes. So I hope it does become a kind of prototype thing, but the way they're talking doesn't look like that's exactly how it's going to be.
There we go. No 250s or thousands feels wrong. Christovet 954. It does feel wrong. It's these weird numbers now. Martin Ferreira smells like World Superbikes to me. Used to be a big deal, but times have changed. It was a weird one. So I'm glad they brought that up, because it was definitely a good conversation to have. So Paul, everyone in the comments, last week we spoke about the big Italian elephant in the room. There still is this big Italian elephant in the room, but it's got a Japanese logo on the side of it. Ai Ogura. It's the best place to start. We've been singing his praises throughout the year. His racecraft. I've been lucky enough to see him in his debriefs and that, and he's just this very mature, methodical kind of rider. We know the speed that he's got, we know the late race pace that he's got. There was always that question of, right, you've got to improve your Fridays and your Saturdays, especially your Saturdays, in terms of qualifying, getting yourself high up on the grid, and there's no doubt you're going to be a challenger for podiums more often than not. While he did that at Brno, we all know what happened there. Was pushed Marc Marquez all the way to the line, picked up second place, felt like he should have won that. But he came up against the Mark that dug deep and got it done. Assen looked really good the whole weekend. Decent enough sprint race, although he came up against the Ralph Fernandez that, it's double-edged sword there, because Ralph Fernandez has this ability to go at the start of races when it's a full fuel tank, tires are still new. He's got this ability that is his strongest suit, Ralph Fernandez. He can just go. We saw it again in the Sunday race. He can just go. He doesn't worry. It backfires a little bit towards the end of a race, because he's got to hope that his tires last. But most of the time, to be able to go that fast with a fuel tank and everything where it is, that is his superpower. Ai Ogura is the opposite. He kind of needs that bedding in kind of time. He needs 10 laps to really get settled in. Fuel load comes down, and then he can kind of get to where he's going. This time, great start, right up there. But Ai Ogura didn't get the start. Was a little bit back in the field, and you kind of saw him coming, and you thought, oh, well, this is blown now. Martin and Ralph Fernandez are gone. Then he closes. Then his ride-out device gets stuck, but this kid still just rides, with the thing on the deck, deactivates it, loses all that time, catches it up, passes Martin, Ralph Fernandez on the exact same motorbike. Not an easy thing to do, no matter where you are or who you are in the world, and wins the race comfortably in the end. Superstar, absolute superstar. And if you look how he took his helmet off. He's got a good set of hair, not even wet, and it's scorching temperatures, there where other riders were suffering everything. You looked at the Ai Ogura on that Aprilia the last couple of rounds, and you now look at it and go, right, we're going to be seeing this more often than not. This is now that little switch that's finally happened. And I think, there still might be one or two chinks that might show themselves, but we saw it in Moto 2. Once he made that switch, found that switch, especially with qualifying, it was still a bit easier in those days to come through the field, compared to MotoGP's in now. But once he found that thing, he went on to be world champion. So, let's not count him out just yet.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And he had both races, sprint and Sunday. He didn't have great starts. He got duffed up properly, and he doesn't panic. Some guys panic, and they then do stupid things, and they have little moments, and they end up 5 places worse off because they've run wide, or they get punted out the way because they're trying to take a gap that's not there. He doesn't panic. He settles down once 3 or 4 guys have passed him, gets to a point where so that's a confidence thing. He has absolute confidence in his bike and his ability. So he never gets to a point, I think now, where he's thinking, oh, damn it, now I'm in 5th and I should be in 2nd. He just says 1 rider per lap, one or whatever his thinking is, and that's what he does. As soon as he gets that gap and he passes, I mean, the worst thing he's done in his MotoGP career was with Pedro Acosta in Barcelona. Other than that, he is squeaky clean. He passes you. He gives you no room to shut the door. He's decisive, but he's clean. And once he gets ahead of you, there's 3 bike lengths out of the same corner where he's just passed you. No, this kid is, I mean, I call him a kid. He's 25. He's realized what it takes to win. Make no mistake, being on that bike is a huge help, but take nothing away from him. He's really, Ralph Fernandez didn't win. Jorge Martin didn't win. Bezzecchi didn't win. They all have the same tools. He was the one who used it to the best. And just think this guy, as we said, we've said it for, I don't know, from the beginning of the year where he was finishing 5th, 6th, 5th, get your qualifying sorted. Now he's done that. Well, he's become a weapon. And we've always said, don't do it one weekend, do it for a couple of weekends. He's now done that. Yeah, it's been 2, a 2nd and a 1st on Sunday races is, that's insane for a guy who we know he's got the speed but hasn't been there. Now he's putting this package together. He's going to be deadly for the rest of the year.
And a good point that Wayne Taylor makes there. It's just another rider for the likes of Bezzecchi, Martin to be worried about. We've spoken over the last couple of weeks, Paul, about, how are Aprilia, the factory team, going to manage this 2 riders in the championship hunt, going for that world title that they so desperately want in MotoGP, to beat Ducati, to be the top Italian dogs. And at the moment, as Ivan Pilisic said, Trackhouse looking better than the factory guys. Very interesting. And it's purely, Davide Brivio, I think, also needs to come into the conversation here, because I looked at him in the pit again. We know that he's leaving to Honda. Guidotti's already kind of plugged in there, kind of learning the ropes. He's been at Brno and he was out at Assen now, kind of just in the background there, but learning as much as he can, I think, from Brivio. And well, if he isn't, he should be, because Davide Brivio has got this magic wand somewhere that he keeps, because he's just able to get it all to work. He did it at Suzuki. We've seen it. He's just so good with young riders and how he manages young riders, and he's doing it again now with Ralph Fernandez. Had no career in MotoGP for me until Brivio got there. Brivio slowly but surely, cracked the case there with Ralph Fernandez, and he's become this really good MotoGP rider now who Trackhouse can't afford to lose. All of a sudden he's from not being considered in MotoGP, now he's got 2 contracts potentially on the table, maybe even more than that now. So I think Brivio needs a big pat on the back. That whole team needs a big pat on the back. Justin Marks from Trackhouse. They've got Superfile, the new sponsor, as well. Looks like a great setup. If you look at, that's the same team essentially that Darren Binder was in and Dovi were in, under Razlan, where they were finishing, last and second last half the time. Not half the time. Darren had some really good, impressive rides, but they were certainly a bit further back in the field on the Yamahas. And then there was everything going on about sponsors and this, no one paid and this and this and this. And Razlan kind of handed the team over to Justin Marks, came in and saved that team. And in a short space of time to be doing what they're doing is a testament to the whole team, to Ai Ogura, to Ralph Fernandez, David Brivio, and everyone in there. So, to take it to the factory boards, not only factory Aprilia, factory Ducati, factory Honda, factory Yamaha, factory KTM, to all of them, is a great achievement, and it's brilliant for the sport. It's brilliant for MotoGP to see this again, and it's a couple of years ago with Pramac, Ducati, and Jorge Martin, Trackhouse are now taking that mantle.
Yeah, Rob, I think a whole lot of things have fallen into place for them. Firstly, I'm 100% in agreement about Brivio. I think he's got something. I mean, you look, he took over Rossi at Yamaha, but Rossi was at the peak of his powers. But he manipulated the deal to get Rossi on the Yamaha. Then he had Jean Mir on the Suzuki. Probably, I don't want to say an unlikely world champion. I mean, at the time, Mir was consistent and he took him to a world. He's got something. But that just shows this team is now operating as a team. Yeah. So I think that makes, everything. And whether they, Fernandez is that side and Ogura, whether they connect or not is irrelevant. Brivio is the link. He knows exactly how to put all those pieces in the right place. And I think it makes a huge difference with Trackhouse, knowing that the cash is sorted. Because clearly, Justin Marks runs a massive, I think it's a NASCAR team. He certainly knows what he's doing. And clearly, the money is sorted, which in the background, we saw it with KTM last year. No matter what anyone says, money in motorsport at this level is critical. And to know that it's sorted just puts one little stress piece of the puzzle, whatever it is, out the way. And I think that's where these guys are at the moment. The fact that they've got a bike that is fantastic. Raul Fernandez was on this bike from the beginning of the year, and initially he wasn't great. He had one or two moments last year. That's what I'm saying. Brivio's got this whole thing to function. Every part of the cog is working almost to its max. So fantastic. And I tell you what, the factory Aprilia team, I think they're starting to sit up and really take note of their little minion there in the corner, who's now dominating their dominance, which is, as you say, Rob, fantastic to see. Just adds a little twist into an already twisty season as far as this year has gone.
Yeah, good comment here from Chris DeVet, 9572 in the land of YouTube. Ogura and Martin teammates next year at Yamaha. Who is going to be the number one at the end of the season? And, Paul, it was announced today, Yamaha put out the release saying, thank you, Quartararo, thank you, Rins, but goodbye. And then tomorrow, I think it's 10 a.m., Yamaha are going to make the announcement, whether it's both Ogura and Martin at the same time or Martin first and then Ogura, I don't know. But looking at it now, that is some business by Yamaha. They needed to get two big names to kind of really take them to the next level. And the more you think of it, the more you look at it and you're going, we know Yamaha's problems. We know where they are now. But if you look at it, it was almost the same as Vinales and Espargaro on Aprilia a couple of years ago, where the energy just wasn't there. It was like, okay, well, we're going through the motions now. It's not us, it's the bikes. We just need to get out of here. And that's pretty much the same thing with Quartararo. Maybe not so much Rins. Rins was more just damaged goods, unfortunately, with everything that happened to him, But this could very well be the refresh that Yamaha need. And looking at it, surely the likes of Martin and Ogura are gonna step up your project, and we could be talking about Yamaha competing for podiums, race wins, and potentially world championships again with those two riders.
Yeah, absolutely. But going back to the original question, who would be the number one? Well, I can tell you what, Martin will tell you he's the number one.
Yeah.
Ai Ogura will tell you on the track.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be, how's that? Same as pretty much if you saw that YouTube video of Ralph Fernandez standing on his bike, celebrating his third place or second place, and Ai Ogura just sitting there like, so I think Martin, Ai Ogura similar, where the one's going to be, I don't want to say the noise, and Ai Ogura is going to be that just do what's got to be done. It's going to be an interesting dynamic, because once again, you've got a very outspoken, loud, aggressive, if that's not quite the right word, personality in Martin, and you're going to have Ai Ogura, who just does what he has to do. Be interesting to see. I think that decision will not be made if there is a hierarchy until the end of this season, because right now, what would you do? Martin's leading the world championship, but Ai Ogura is the faster as per the last 2 weekends. So what do? Difficult one. It'll be, it's either going to be very explosive or it's going to work like a charm.
Paul, it's as Frank Davis says, the factory Aprilia team has one problem. It has two number one riders that causes problems. And, you cast your mind back to Rossi, Lorenzo. We've spoken about it a couple of times. It's a good conversation to have, because I've always said there can't be two number one. It just cannot be. There has to be a number one and a number two. Teams will never admit it. Marc Marquez came into Ducati and he quickly made himself number one, to the demise of Pecco Bagnaia, who's now leaving to go to Aprilia. Pecco's going to have to deal with the fact of trying to be the number one rider ahead of Bezzecchi. There is a number one rider. Brad Binder in KTM. Pedro Acosta came into the KTM team. He is the number one rider. Okay, we say teams don't really like to show it. KTM did. Pit Byra has kind of said that Pedro Acosta is their man. But there's always going to be a winner and there's always going to be a loser. And at the moment, that's the hard thing for the factory Aprilia to juggle. Yeah, last year we all thought Ducati would have this problem with Marc and Pecco. Pecco not being able to get the results kind of diminished that, and Ducati didn't have this problem. They went, okay, great, well, we've won the world title anyway with Marc, so thanks Pecco for the last couple of years, but as long as we have a red bike winning, we don't care, and as long as we have a 93 on the front of it, even better. Aprilia are looking at this going, well, we said it a couple of weeks ago, Paul, how do they handle this now? Because Jorge Martin is leaving. Ai Ogura is leaving. Bezzecchi is staying. Raul Fernandez is potentially staying. So, but how do you shift that focus? Because Martin's doing everything right in terms of how to win a world championship, because this is exactly what he did a couple of years ago. Yeah. Okay, he's not winning every race, but while Pecco Bagnaia was crashing, Martin was on the podium. While Bezzecchi's crashing, Martin's on the podium, and now Martin leads the world championship. So, but how do you not give that energy and time? I agree doing the same. How do you not give that time and energy? I'm pretty sure Aprilia in their position are so desperate and want to win that world championship. That is more value than anything else. Obviously, they would love to do it with Bezzecchi and have that number one plate on the bike proudly next year if he did run it. But it's a tough predicament for Rivola, and we know the pressure that he's been under the last couple of weeks, having to come out, defend riders, criticize riders, and do everything. He had that incident with Raul Fernandez where he went to Brivio and kind of gave him like, what the hell's your team doing? They sat down at the meeting, and since that meeting, it's almost like Trackhouse came out and went, okay, you want us to sit in the corner and be quiet while you guys get along with the job? Okay, well, we'll show you. It really has that feel to it, and it's they're not just fighting factory Ducatis anymore. They really aren't. It's this battle within, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. But as Frank Davis says, there can only be one number one rider in the team, and that, apart from Martin and Ogura next year, Acosta and Marc Marquez.
Rob, the dynamic is it's. I don't think we've seen it for a while, that it's so evolved over the last let's say the last 4 races, because when the rumors of Martin going to Yamaha and then Ai Ogura started, we're going back, I don't know, 5 races. At that time, in your mind, when you heard that, straight away you thought, okay, Martin number one, Ai Ogura is going to be there. They need him. It's Japanese, he can speak the lingo, they want him, he's talented, but he wasn't doing what he's doing 4 or 5 races later. So that initial rumor started when there was no doubt Martin was going to be the named rider, and Ai Ogura was going to be the number 2. I don't care what anyone says, that would have been your. Yes. But now the dynamic has changed. All of a sudden, you now have a rider, they on level pegging. Yes, Martin leads the championship 100%, but Ai Ogura has shown better form. He didn't do as well as Martin at the beginning of the year, and saying that he was finishing 5th and 6th when Martin was finishing 2nd and 3rd. So it's not like he was 15. The dynamic has changed. This is now putting, out of this year, this is putting pressure on Yamaha for next year, because suddenly they're like, oh shit, but how are we going to deal with this? Going back to Aprilia, they've also got a problem, because we said it. Last year, Bezzecchi fell into the leadership role, took it on with beautifully. How much praise have we given him? Started this year exactly how he finished last year. And suddenly the heat has got turned up, not just by his teammate. Ducati beat him. Diggia and Antonio beat him. Alex Marquez beat him. But now 2 satellite teams of the Aprilias. So suddenly this whole cauldron of riders is putting pressure on Bezzecchi, and we keep coming back to that. So suddenly you've got a dynamic that we don't know what's happening. I mean, this dynamic this year is just unbelievable. So I don't know I don't know what it's going to do at Yamaha. I don't know what it's going to do at Aprilia going forward. I agree with you. I think this year Aprilia have to throw all their resources to win the World Championship, regardless of whether it goes to Yamaha or not. Yes. They'll still be able to say we were world champions. If they don't win it, whether they all stayed on Aprilia, they can't say they're world champions. So I think their thinking must be our sole focus. Doesn't matter who wins. They got to try and take that out of the equation, which is not easy. They want Bez on the bike, no doubt. But I think that's got to be their thinking. So difficult dynamic for them, but I believe they'll throw everything at it. I don't think they'll take from Martin, not let him test or ride a new. I think they'll give everyone. Obviously, if one of them drops out the championship race and is now way behind, different story. But while they, 4 of them in the top 6, I thought whatever it is, I think they're going to throw all their resources to make sure they win.
Listen, there was another, apart from Bezzecchi, it was another good weekend for Aprilia, showcasing how good their bike is in tricky conditions, hot, the fast-flowing circuit that is Assen. They were just good from start to finish, other than Bezzecchi. So, it sounds like the wheels are falling off in many ways, and they are in some ways for the factory team, but it's more Bezzecchi's side. And while he's faltering, the other side are just getting better and better and better. So that's something Bezzecchi is going to have to deal with, because up until now he has been Aprilia's blue-eyed boy. And in MotoGP that can change overnight, and you've got to deal with it. And we'll get into the Bezzecchi straight after this comment. Matt Berto, a good mate of mine here in the UK. I'll be listening, not live, as I drive down through Europe to World Ducati Week tomorrow. I'm looking forward to the chat. Matt, enjoy World Ducati Week.
Yeah.
Lucky bastard. What a great place. I was lucky enough to go a couple of years ago, I think it was 2017 or 2018. Ducati South Africa took us along there, myself and Donovan Free, actually, to Mazzano, Marco Simoncelli circuit, just Ducatis everywhere, Ducatis riders everywhere. I mean, it's even if you're not a Ducati fan, it's just motorcycle heaven. So Matt, enjoy that, man. Very, very jealous, not just myself, but I'm sure Paul and everyone else in the comments.
Everyone, send Diggia and Mark my regards.
Yeah, there we go, Matt. Sort it out there. Tell him Uncle Paul says how's it. Let's move on to Bezzecchi then, Paul. Carrying on with the conversation of Aprilia and Ai Ogura. After everything that happened at Brno, he needed a reaction. He needed to come into Assen and kind of reset that. We saw the emotion there. We know that emotion. We know that this is the weight of the world's on Bezzecchi's shoulders. He wants to be a MotoGP world champion. He knows this. He's got the perfect opportunity to do that. And up until now, he's done just about everything right, other than his Saturday performances. Got disqualified, no points on Sunday. Championship down to 40 points with Marc Marquez hunting him down. His teammates right there. Ai Ogura is coming. Diggi's right there. There's just all these factors that you've spoken about, that Marco Bezzecchi is now thinking about. He's not going into race weekends just thinking, well, I'm the man to beat anymore. He's thinking about all these other dynamics that are being thrown at him left, right, and center. Everything looked to be going well. Again, looked tentative in Saturday's sprint race. Kind of looked like a rider that was like, just bring this bike home. You know what I mean? There's more pace in me, but I just need to bring this bike home, which you did. I think 4th place. Great. Cool. You beat Marc Marquez, okay. You lost out to Jorge Martin. No big deal, but you've beaten Marc Marquez. You can deal with that. Cool. Then the Sunday race comes. Doesn't get a bad start, but finds himself behind Marc Marquez. And I think that's the big factor here. Is Bezzecchi looking at him? He almost rushed it. That pressure of now you've got to perform everything that happened at Brno. Marc's there. Marc can be very tough to pass. Martin's going to go. Ralph Fernandez is going to go. Ai Ogura is going to come. All that. It just looked like it was on his shoulders in that very corner. And then down he went. And brutal crash. Horrific to watch. It's one of those crashes that you watch and then when they don't replay it and you don't hear anything, it was a good 5 minutes before we actually heard any information. You're kind of going, this is not great. The only saving factor there was that there was no red flag. That kind of gives you, okay, well, there must be some kind of light at the end of the tunnel there. But yeah, I don't know how you saw the whole situation and everyone in the comments, but it certainly did seem like a Bezzecchi that was trying to rush things, and by doing that got caught out and now finds himself battered and bruised. No broken bones or anything, thankfully, but certainly going to be a lot of bruises, potential nerve damage, muscle damage, and only a week to really recover before you've got to go do it again at a very tricky Saxon ring where we know Marc Marquez loves the place, and you turn left for days, but it's a track you do not want to go to with a paper cut, because it's gonna hurt you. So give us your breakdown of Bezzecchi over the weekend.
Yeah, listen, I watched Friday and he just looked so strong on Friday. He, someone would set a fast time, didn't matter who it was. When he went out, he'd do his sighting lap, call it a sighting lap, get the tires up to temperature, and then he'd bang in 2 fast laps. And straight away he'd be 0.3 quicker. He just had everything under control. And exactly what you say, Rob, I think he panicked. He didn't get pole position, which, it was a given. He should have been 0.3 ahead on pole. His teammate gets pole position. And then he has not a great start in the race. Saturday, I think he did the right thing. Just finished, because he's crashed in 4 out of 7 or 4 out of 9 sprints before that. So right thing to do. Just bring the bike home, small points, little mental gain. Sunday, exactly what you said is what I thought. I didn't say Mark. I just said he hasn't got into the front after the first lap, and he's already seen Martin with Raul Fernandez pull in a gap. He's not worried about who it is. He just sees they're already a second up the road, and I think he panicked. Instead of doing, which we discussed 7 minutes ago, Ai Ogura, get everything up to, call it temperature, comfortable level, whatever it is, and then one guy. He panicked. Possibly he saw the Ducati in front of him. Possibly he was thinking of Ai Ogura. Bagnaia was strong. Diggia and Antonio behind him, and his brain was, I need to get a gap on them, but I can't let them get away in the front. And I think he just, that thing let go. No one crashes there, generally, and it let go, it just went. So a massive crash. He's very, very lucky to get away with cuts and scrapes, as he said, and he's going to be proper sore. But I think the biggest thing is it's a dent in his confidence, because he had a weekend where, when Marc Marquez says, and people are going to shout at us for mentioning Marc Marquez again, but Marc said it'll be very difficult for us because Bezzecchi should walk away with 37 points here. Didn't. Now in his head, he hears that, he reads that. Someone says to him, "Oh, did you hear what Marc Marquez said about you?" He's like, "I know, I've got this." And then he hasn't. It's starting to, just those little chinks are starting to get a little bit bigger. Now he doesn't only have to worry about Marc. He's got to worry about Ai. He's got to worry about Diggia. He's got to worry about Jorge Martin. Difficult one. So, and he's going to be sore. You've had big crashes, Rob. He's got 10 days, basically. You don't recover from that by Saturday feeling, lack of cheer. He's going to be sore, really sore. So he's going to have to, dig deep this coming weekend, not this weekend, next weekend in Saxon Ring, to pull it all together again and get back to where he should be.
Paul, Bezzecchi's got the soft side to him, the soft center. We saw it come out at Bruno. There's the arrogant racing competitive side where you've crashed. It's, you're in that thing and you go slap a marshal. But then there's that soft center that Bezzecchi has that, if I think of when I've always spoken about Marco Bezzecchi, I never, and I admitted this, at the start of the season when he had that beautiful run, he was leading the World Championship and he was running away with it. I kind of said, I put my hands up. I'd never seen Bezzecchi at this kind of rider. I didn't, because I always saw this great rider, but just didn't have that thick skin to really go for it. And it was, I enjoyed seeing that emotion from him last week, because it reminds us that they're human. He admitted his mistake, and he owned up to it, which I think is a great testament to a sportsman and a man in general, to be honest, which was great. But it could also be the failing of his, because I can see him being the type of rider, like you said, with that Marc Marquez comment. I think he'll take that kind of thing in, where a Martin and that can just push it aside and go,
Yeah.
and deal with it in an arrogant way. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
Bezzecchi could take these things hard. I could see Bezzecchi lying in bed now, and most professional athletes have been there. Top superbike riders or motorcycle racers have been there. You're lying there. You're in this massive amount of pain. Your mind's going to go to these negative thoughts or these depressing thoughts of, oh man, I screwed up last weekend. I did it again. Marc's coming. Ai Ogura's, you know what I mean? And he's just lying there taking all this in. Exactly what you said about confidence. This is where Bezzecchi is going to be truly tested now. We've seen what Bezzecchi can be. Now we've got to see how Bezzecchi can recover from this. This is every champion is going to be tested in his career. The real champions are always going to be tested. Rossi was tested, Lorenzo was tested, Casey Stoner was tested. The aliens were tested and they came out the other side. I can't help but feel like this is Bezzecchi's test now. How's he going to come out of this? He's got to go to Sachsenring and he's got to compete. I think he will, depending on how seriously battered he is, but I think he will come out. I think the Aprilia is going to do well at Sachsenring, because of, again, similar to Assen, fast flowing kind of nature, which the Aprilia seems to like. It changes direction really well. Stability seems to have improved, but this is the ball's in Bezzecchi's court now. He's got the team behind him. He's got the bike behind him, as Ai Ogura and Martin are showing. He's got to now just sort himself out. He's at the weight of the world on his shoulders the last couple of rounds. He just needs to get back to the Martin from 4 or 5 races ago, kind of try and wipe the slate clean. There's one more race before the summer break. Get it done. Even if it's not beating Marc, if it's not beating Jorge, keep yourself in that race. Just get the points on the board. Keep yourself in the race. Then you've got your 5 or 6 week break, whatever you've got, reset. And then it's to Silverstone, where we know how competitive they can be there, and hopefully kick on the second part of his season and keep himself in this championship hunt. Because I think, personally, I've turned into a Bezzecchi fan. I want to see him competing. I want to see Aprilia competing. But as I said, ball's in his court now.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. The only thing that worries me a little bit, if you go back to 2024 with Martin and Pecco, Martin ended up being the champion because he crashed way less than Pecco. And he was a deserved champion, 100%. So Oak with the most points at the end of the year. Now, Bezzecchi mustn't fall into that trap where, which unfortunately he's done it. The last 4 races have not been good for him. You can't do that. Your bad days have got to be Martin's 3rd place. That's we know that. And it's easy for us to say that. And we've just commented on how I believe he did the right thing in the sprint race, bring the bike home. Then when the main points count, and I know it's racing, can happen, but definitely he needs to be a little bit less panicky, if that's what it was. Yes. And just from now, he's got, there's 11 races left. I think it is 12 races left. Now he's got to finish every single race. If it means he finishes 6th, so be it. 6th is better than nothing. So it's going to be a challenge for him. But you're quite right. Get through next weekend at Sachsenring. Then he's got a break. Regardless of what happens, he needs to finish. But whatever he does, he becomes 3rd or he comes 10th. He's then got that break to reset, regather, which we said last year Pecco needed to do, and he couldn't. So let's hope that Bezzecchi, whatever it is, gets back on track. Because as you say, we've become a fan. He's a nice guy. And it's so great to see so many Oaks racing. You don't want to see one of them drop out for whatever reason, but he needs to sharpen up. I think it's his mental game needs to, he needs to work on that. I mean, he's riding, there's no doubt. Look how fast he was, but he's got pressure. He's got a challenge, and, and it's not just, we've said, oh, Marc's coming. Martin's leading. Ai Ogura's there, Don't write off Diggia and Antonio. Slowly catch the monkey. He came to 4th on the weekend, Diggia and Antonio. He crashed at Renault, got up, finished. That's what you got to do. So Bezzecchi needs to be a little bit more circumspect going into the next few races, just to settle his mental confidence.
And this is where he's also coming up against the likes of Martin, who's won two world championships, Moto3, MotoGP. Marc, who's done it, obviously, we know, multiple times, 9-time world champion. Bez has yet to do it, So
Yeah.
it's a tricky one, because if you look at Martin, made the mistake in Hungary, took everyone out, then all this pressure, and him and Aprilia started bashing heads again. But he's able just to reset, go to an Assen. And if you look how he celebrated that third place,
Yeah.
it was like he had won, because he knows it's
Yeah.
these weekends that he won his world championship against
correct.
Pecco. As you said, when Pecco was lying in the dirt and he was finishing third, that's when I won my weekends, not when I necessarily beat Pecco one-on-one in a sprint race. And that it was on those weekends that you take advantage when your nearest rival's down. So yeah, Bezzecchi's got a lot of work to do. I take my hat off to Martin again, because he's, as I said, even listening to that Gypsy Tales, I said, when you want to commit and buy Jorge Martin merch, and then you hear something he says and you go, I just can't. This is why I can't. But the guy does bounce back well, he does, and that's exactly what he did this weekend again. He was out front, he wasn't completely happy with the motorcycle underneath him, especially the front end. Hearing the debriefs and the comments that he was making, but he was still able to pull out 2 podiums and come out the end as championship leader. And that's how champions are made. That's what champions do, and you have to give him credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the end game. Whatever happens from the first race till the last lap of the last race is what happens. It's how you deal with all the things in between. And I think that's one thing with Martin. He sees the end game. Yeah, he's there to win every weekend, but he's definitely got that mindset of a longer term vision. And I think he can be we've discussed it, when he's got that Martinator in him, he's deadly. And I think he's getting to that point. He had a little hiccup 2 or 3 races ago, but as you say, he can just reset. He can put everything in the back burner in that little pigeonhole and close the door, and off he goes again. Bezzecchi needs to do that going forward.
He does. Bez needs to kind of look at that and build up that tolerance to everything around him, and to be able to put it aside, and, as you said, put in the pigeonhole and just close the door and move on. So very interesting. Once again, Ralph Fernandez, let's touch upon him quickly, because again, start of the season, I was one of those that said enough chances in MotoGP. Now, it's time to go. Even after the couple of shining rides last year, it's time to go now. Get someone else in that seat. Credit to him, whether it's been the Brivio effect, whatever's happened, whether it's been the risk of losing your MotoGP ride that's now switched him on, and we see a very competent, fast, more consistent MotoGP rider now. One so much so that 1-year deal that he had on the table from Tech 3, which looked like was going to be saving grace to stay in MotoGP, despite him and his KTM history, when he was at Tech 3 in years gone by, they seem to have meant that, because that was going to be his only way to stay in MotoGP at the time, or 2-year contract, I should say. Trackhouse have now come to the party. They recognize his talent, which we all knew was there, but I think they've maybe seen a change in mind space, a change in maturity with Raul. Something certainly happened. The results speak for themselves, of course, as well, but looks like potentially staying with Trackhouse. And looking at that move, it was going to be very hard for Trackhouse next year to kind of start with 2 brand new riders. And I think this is Justin Marks' thinking is, Ai Ogura, we've lost him. He would have been first choice to keep, no doubt about it. It was always going to be very hard to keep him. We've lost him. Do we now lose or get rid of Ralph Fernandez and then get Bastianini in, who is one of the riders, and then get another rider, a rookie, Manuel Gonzalez or someone like that, and start fresh with 2 brand new riders, a new team manager with Guidotti? Do we start things completely new bike? Do we do everything, or do we have a little bit of consistency and a little bit of stability with Ralph Fernandez, his same crew chief, knows the team, knows everything, and go that route? And it looks like they are going to go that route. It's up to Ralph Fernandez now. The ball's in his court, whether he wants to sign with KTM, which I can't see happening now. To be honest, I think he will sign that Aprilia contract and stay there. And again, you can't fault him. Cool. He's still got a half a season to continue proving that and beyond. It's not a case of sign that contract, sign on the dotted line, and then your performances drop, and as we've seen other riders do in the past. But sitting here, you can't help but say, well, he does deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Go back to that Moto2 season where he finished, I don't know, 6 points behind Remy Gardner
Yes.
in his rookie year, won more races. He showed us how good he is. Then he moved to MotoGP a year at Tech 3. I mean, he just hasn't performed. Last year, I mean, he won in Australia, one great race. This year, it's been a different rider. But the first half of this year, or the first third, he wasn't great. I just hope it's not a case of once he signed that contract, he goes back to being the old, because now he's desperate. When I say desperate, he wants a ride, he wants this ride, he wants a good ride. I hope that once he signs, and I'm presuming he's going to sign with Trackhouse, I just hope he doesn't slump back into the old Raul Fernandez, because that was a disappointing guy who we often remarked is even in the race. So he's shown us how competitive, how good he actually is. He needs to keep that going. So it'll be very interesting to see. Once again, my favorite saying, I'm on the fence with this guy. There's just something about him. I think he's a bit of an imposter. So I hope he proves me wrong. I'll be the first to say, Raul, thank you very much. But once he signed that contract, let's see where that commitment is. So I hope he proves me wrong, because it's fantastic to see. And I mean, he's shown he is proper fast.
No, he is. He's deserving of the contract. He's deserving to stay in MotoGP on this current form. He's just got to, for himself, you've proven to yourself you can do it. So why not, just stay at that level? Don't get back in that rabbit hole of it's everyone else's fault or whatever. Just whatever you're doing now, just keep it going, because there's a great rider there, and having a Raul Fernandez up there, the way he just doesn't care and shoves it on the inside and does things, it's great to have him up there. Just to answer this comment here from John Kotso, you guys think too much of what impact Marc has on other riders. Why would Bez worry about what Marc says? So John, I understand what you're saying, but I reply to you is Valentino Rossi was the master at it. Marc Marquez learned from him. Valentino Rossi put Seta Gibernau out, put many riders out on their bums with what he said, the mind games that he played, all tactical, absolutely all tactical. He tried it with Marc. Unfortunately, it backfired. I'll stick to that story for the rest of my life. But why would Bez worry what Marc has to say? Because Marc is the reference in MotoGP. And of course you would worry. Marc has kicked Pecco Bagnaia out of Ducati. Marc is, and I know people hate the fact that Marc gets spoken about so much, but it's because he's the reference. It's because he can come back time and time again after injury and prove people wrong. And that's what he does so well. You look at Marc in the past, and I've always said it, Marc will have a big crash. He did it in Indonesia that year where on the Honda, we had that massive high side and crumbled the bike. Marc, I would love to be a fly on the wall, but Marc is the kind of rider that would go, right, guys, we cannot show weakness here. What I have to do is I've got to climb on that bike, and within 3 laps, if I can, put in a fast time, just to really destroy everyone. And that's what Marc would do. Rossi, as I said, was the king at it. Rossi would play games with guys like that, with Gibernau's and them, and he would destroy them mentally. And unfortunately, there's riders, and I don't want to put Bezzecchi in that pool of riders just yet, but there are those riders that fall into those traps, and there are those riders that are sensitive to comments and do take these things on board, and they get impacted by it. So far, Bezzecchi, as we said at the start of the year, the maturity was coming through, and he was beating Marc at his own game in many ways. But since Marc has come back, not fitter and stronger, he's still making his way back. But Bezzecchi is looking at this going, well, this Marc's come back at 85, 90%, and he's competitive and he's beating me, and that plays on you. It has to play on you. As a professional sportsman, for you to be beaten by someone that is 85% or 90%, not where you are, it's going to play on your mind. So I hear what you're saying, John, and I know it's very frustrating for a lot of people, the Marc mentioned and this impact that Marc has on other riders and the impact that he has on MotoGP. But it's real. And please, everyone in the comments, whether you're a Marc fan or not, get your comment in there. But for me, I can understand why Marc has an impact, and he will have an impact on some riders. Jorge Martin has that ability to shut it out. I think because he lives on the similar kind of arrogance, if you like. Marc disguises it a hell of a lot better, just like Rossi did. But that puts the likes of Pecco Bagnaia, Marco Bezzecchi on the chopping block because of their vulnerability in these ways. That's why I said earlier, it's up to Bezzecchi to come out and go, right, this is done now. If I want to be world champion, I've got to be able to put all this stuff aside. I've got to be able to be distracted by this and say, okay, whatever, man, I'm going to go do my talking on the track. Exactly like what you said with Ai Ogura at the moment. Ai Ogura just goes, okay, well, I'm in 7th place. Didn't get the start that I wanted. Okay, well, okay, my ride-ass device is stuck. Okay,
Yeah.
let me sort it, where other riders will go, wouldn't have even attempted to go right. Would have just put their hand up, my ride-ass device is stuck.
Yeah.
Ai Ogura's got the maturity and to kind of go through there. I don't know if you saw the after the scenes, the unseen stuff of the, I think it was a sprint race, where Ai Ogura is talking to his team, and he's again very very methodical, not overjoyed, not jumping on his team. If you look at his whole celebration, methodical, like, guys, great, I'm happy, of course, but there's more work to do here.
Yeah.
Pecco Bagnaia comes and says well done to him, and he looks around at Pecco and he says to his team, that guy just gave up. That guy just gave, this is Ai Ogura. He's not looking at this being starstruck or anything. He's going, that guy just gave up. I've got him right where I want him. That's the different kinds of mentality that you deal with. And Marc's been at the forefront of that because he's been unbreakable in that department. No one's been able to break Marc. We've seen cracks appear with the likes of Martin and Bezzecchi and that, but Marc's able to plaster over them and come back and do what he did. Marc's not going to, he can't come back and win. He comes back and wins in Hungary. Goes to Brno, he wins there. Yeah, that is statement. That is statement stuff, and it's going to play on your mind. So, John could say, I know it's frustrating, but for me, yes, absolutely, Marc does have an impact, and he will do for as long as he's in that paddock. So I'll catch up with
Rob, and some riders know that, and Rossi knew it. Marc knows it. People take to heart what he says, and like you said, Martin can just brush it aside. He'll take out of it what he feels he needs to. Otherwise, he won't even remember it tomorrow. When maybe, and we don't know, but maybe Bezzecchi's like, wow, did you hear what Marc said about it? We could be wrong. He might brush it aside and say, oh, that Alex making a noise again. Who's he in my life? But I don't think that's the case.
So John replied a bit after that, what did he do? So John, for a little bit of context, what did he do? He left Honda, climbed on a Ducati. Okay, didn't have the first season that probably we all thought he would in terms of domination, but he was in a satellite Ducati, won races, finished, I think, 3rd in the World Championship that year or whatever. And then last year dominated, completely dominated, won with, what was it, 4 races to go.
Yeah.
Now, this is a rider that came back from nearly having his arm amputated type thing. So that's what he did. And then again, using a more recent thing, he comes back from this nerve damage, literally comes off a hospital bed, goes into Hungary at 75, 80% fit, hadn't done as much training or whatever as anyone else, and he wins and he dominates the weekend. And then he backs it up by going to Brno. He was 120 points behind Bezzecchi. He's now 40 points behind Bezzecchi. Okay, Martin now leads. So when you say, what did he do? And it won't play on Bezzecchi's mind. God, it would play on my mind. It would play on anyone's mind. I had 120 points over a Marc Marquez who wasn't looking good, had to go in for another surgery. Ducati wasn't fantastic. Three runs later, he's 40 points behind me. So I know you're trying to put up an argument, Jan, and I love it. That's what this show's for, is this good, open, honest debate. But I think when you literally put the facts down on a piece of paper, that's what he did. And I'm not saying it's the full testament to why Bezzecchi is battling. Certainly a big chunk of it, in my mind.
Yeah. And Robert's journalism. Someone else might have said exactly the same thing, but because Marc Marquez said it, so Martin might have said, listen, the way Bezzecchi's going this weekend, he's going to take 37 points. But when Marc says it, it gets published. So that also, you're hearing stuff from Marc that some 5 other guys might have said exactly the same thing, because I watched Friday morning and afternoon session, and as we discussed earlier, Bez was on it. There was absolutely no doubt. So now mind games come into it. And as I say, it got reported because Marc said it, but possibly the whole paddock was saying it. And that got in. I'm not saying that got into his head, but I think to a point when he didn't get the start he wanted, he didn't, these are things that can lead to this. I've got to get it past this guy. I've got to get, and you make these mistakes, which is, that was a mistake on his behalf.
Yeah. Craig Hicks, what you selling at Silverstone this year, Rob? ? I've got a couple of things, Craig. So drop me a private message and we can have the discussion. Some will probably, hopefully be in your budget because there's some great things. I've got through Shuey very kindly. I've got the new Marc Marquez replica, which is identical to his race helmet, along with a race prep visor from the Shuey truck there with all his decals on and the tear off and everything signed. Helmet and visor is going to be signed by Marc, and also a top rack, whereas Ai Ogura one. So private message me, Craig, and give me your budget and let's see what we can get for you. I'm always trying to help as many people as I can. I don't, my days of running around trying to get signatures, I hope, are behind me, but I'm always happy to help out a fellow MotoGP nut if I can. So drop me a message. What's this comment here? I just want to literally any other manufacturer to win the championship again. Okay, I'm trying to see if I can get some other comments here regarding the. Okay, people are a lot of Brad conversation going on, which we will talk about later. I promise you. Robro 91, shit man, I'm late. You are late. That's a double long lap penalty.
Yeah,
it's a double long lap penalty. I don't even know if you should make it to the starting line, my buddy. But anyway, it's good to have you. Thank you.
Well, at least he's there. Yeah,
at least he's there. Donnie Markel, Toprak starting to find his feet. I'll make mention of Toprak later because I think it's definitely worth a conversation. Rob Rot 91. Marc said Bears must win this weekend. Bears saw him in front of him and went for it and lost it. Again, just those little comments, as you said, Paul. Marc to come in the weekend, and the first thing he kind of says is, if Bears doesn't walk out of here with 37 points, he's doing something wrong. Yeah. And there's the reaction. Marc's sitting there going, well, I told you so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, like you said, Marc put on the soft tire. He didn't have the pace to compete with the Aprilia this weekend. He just didn't. We'll talk about him just now, but he didn't. But he puts a soft tire on to make sure he's ahead of them, to try and get as much advantage early on as he possibly could.
Yeah.
Let me get ahead of you, and then you've got to try and get past me. That's, I'm going to make this hard for you. And I agree. I know you said you didn't really put the Marc thing together. I think if there was any other rider in front of Bezzecchi there, if he knew Marc was behind him, I think Bez would have made that race and he would have been on the podium. I think the fact that it was Marc Marquez ahead of him so early on, and the fact that it was his Aprilia guys going, he went, no. You want to say what about me, Marc? I'm going to teach you. And unfortunately, it caught him out in a big way. Thankfully, he's not hurt. But that is the impact those words can have. There's no doubt about it. John Kotze, thanks for the reply. Let's touch on this topic when Bez wins the championship. If it's not Pecco, it will be Bez. And John, as I said, I've become a huge Bez fan. And I don't want this to impact it. I don't want Marc to get under. I want Bez to rise, as I did with Pecco. I wanted them to rise and go, no ways, and show the true champions that they are. I still think there's more to come from Pecco. I think he kind of knew that environment had switched, not against him, but certainly more towards Marc. So he's making the move that he has to make. But yeah, I hope this isn't. I hope Bez is not going to just give up, and I don't think he is. I think we're going to see, might not be at Sachsenring now. He might need a little bit more time mentally and physically to recover, but certainly after that, from Silverstone onwards, I think Bez is going to come back, and let's hope he does, because look at the championship that we've been spoiled with so far this season.
Absolutely, and Rob, we're not dissing the guy. We've been singing his praises since, what did he win? The last 3 races last year, the first 2 this year, or the other way around. Led the most amount of laps that any rider has ever led consecutively. We've been singing his praises. We're just now being a little bit critical because we seem to think he's falling apart. I'm not saying he's falling apart, but we just want him to get back to that concert. We love it. I agree with you. Bez has become, he's wormed his way into our hearts. We don't want him to worm his way out of that. We want him to do well. But now he's in a position where he's got to show so much maturity, so much controlled aggression, so much temperament. And can he do it? As you mentioned, he hasn't been in this situation before. He's now fighting with four of the best. And up until this past weekend, he was the yardstick. And suddenly now Martin's become the yardstick. Maybe that'll be better for him. Maybe it takes that little bit of spotlight off him and he can reset. But he's got to deal with this. He can't now fall apart. He can't. He's too good for that. The bike is too good. He's shown us what he can do. He needs to, I'm going to say, regather, reset, whatever. But in this sport, you haven't got time for that. You back on it next weekend. Back to the grindstone. You've got 45 minutes, then an hour. You got to be performing. And that's where he needs to find the mental fortitude to do it. And, we've discussed it ad nauseum. Other guys we know can do it. He has to show us now that because he hasn't been challenged. From the beginning of the year, he's led the championship. He's looked like the world champion. Suddenly he's being challenged and he's faltering. And he mustn't. I don't want him to. I want this championship. I'd love him to win. I want this to go down to the wire. I don't want him to fall out, but he's making it difficult. He's doing what Pecco did 2 years ago, and you can't afford that. Then it was Pecco and Martin. Now there's four of them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like Martin, the third has got to be your bad day. Maybe a fourth your bad day can't be in the kitty litter. We know that's going to happen. It's bike racing, but you can't go 4 rounds in a row having bad weekends because then you're throwing away hundreds of points of championship lead. So it's going to be difficult for him. And, we've sung his praises and we're not detracting from him for 1 second. He's making it difficult for us to keep singing his praises of his own doing. Yes, we understand that at Barcelona got taken out. Yeah, that we're not holding him accountable. But those add up, Suddenly you've got so many no scores. So, he needs to. And when it's his fault, he needs to be circumspect and say, okay, what did we do? Let's regroup. And that's the point we're making is he needs to get back on the horse, back to where he was. Not back to where he felt he was 2 years ago. Where he's been this year. He's been the yardstick, and suddenly he's not anymore.
Either way, it's making for very exciting and an interesting championship. Michael Belotha, gents, what do you think about the move on Marc Marquez and Diggi, and do you think the penalty is justified? We will talk about that a little bit later. We'll get into Marc and Diggi because that's a great conversation piece. Kind of reminds me of me and you, Michael, back at the Midval days, shoving it on the inside, me trying to play mind games with you and you trying to bully me on track and that. But who won? Yeah, I won. But then we are great. It's definitely a conversation piece, Michael, and just reminiscing on those great days racing back in the day, 125 cc racing in South Africa. Fantastic times. Cloud Matthews, I know we were the Aprilia. I just heard a rumor recently that Zarco may not be a full-time rider next year with Alcyon and revert to test rider. What are your potential thoughts on that, Uncle Rob and Paul? So we'll quickly answer this while it's relevant and while you've brought it up there, Clyde. I have heard those rumors. Zarco is not in a great place with his knee. I don't even think he's had surgery on his knee yet.
Not yet.
It's a very bad injury, and the more and more that I'm hearing, it could potentially be this injury that's going to put him out as a full-time rider, certainly with LCR, and potentially into a test rider role at what kind of percentage he comes back as a rider mentally and physically. We don't know, but 35 years old, the body doesn't heal as well as it used to. That potentially opens up a seat. I'm not talking about a Brad Binder or something. I haven't heard even Brad's name mentioned for that seat. There could be potentially other options there, but yeah, it's sad that we potentially could be losing Johan Zarco in this way after that horrific crash and not through. A rider like Zarco deserves that kind of final race. The whole crowd is chanting Zarco, hopefully on a podium that we can really say goodbye to him. But it's becoming more and more of a conversation piece that this might have been the last we see of Johan Zarco as a full-time rider.
Yeah, listen, Robert, ACL knee ligament tear is a big injury. It's actually better. I know it's a cock thing to say, but it's actually better to break a bone. Because if nothing else, they can plate it or pin it. Where this, they've got to sew it back on. It's a more of a thing. I don't even know the technicalities. There's hopefully a orthopedic surgeon watching who can tell us. But if you look at any professional sportsman who's had this kind of injury, very seldom do they come back to 100% of where they were. Yeah, and it's not rugby where you're running, but it's a proper injury. So, yeah, and I agree with you. Zarco's had a good career. It would be good and fitting if this happens to be the end of it. It would be fitting. He should have had a proper send-off. End of the last race of his career to have all the riders cheering. That would have been fitting. But this is motorsport, and if it is the way it ends, it'll be very disappointing for him. But yeah, as we've said now, I don't even think they've operated yet. And what's that? 4 weeks ago, because they've got to wait for all the sweat. It's a massive injury, and then the recovery time is a good. I think you're lucky if you get away with 8 weeks, So that rules him out the first 2 or 3 races after the summer break, if everything goes according to plan. So I'd be shocked if we see Zarco back this year.
Yeah, it's horrible to say, but it's the reality of MotoGP these days. James Dent, how you, James? How you, my buddy? Massage that wallet, my Robbo. Get away with words, old James. We're going to move on to Marc Marquez because Typhoon 138 in the land of YouTube. Marc was just doing physical therapy and racking 13 points. Now, again, everyone get typing your comments on what you think about Marc Marquez's weekend. So, Paul, before we came live on air, we briefly spoke about this, and I looked at it, and to me, I saw a Marc that was doing exactly what Typhoon kind of says here. It was physical therapy. He was absolutely destroyed after Bruno. He gave his everything that his mind, his body, his soul had to offer to win that race, and we could see it. That was the most deflated I've seen Marc Marquez energy wise. He had just given everything. 1 week later, you've got to go to Assen, where it's fast flowing. You are just moving from one side to the other on the bike. There's quite a few right-handers involved, which he doesn't particularly like, so he says. But it's I just saw Marc Marquez on the back of Bruno going, I don't have a lot to give here. I'm not feeling comfortable. A couple of comments, and he came out and said, those gravel traps scare the living hell out of me. You talk about Bezzecchi's crash. Marc had that. Was it last year or the year before? He had that exact same crash. He knows what can happen at Assen. We look at Jorge Lorenzo all those years ago where he crashed and broke his shoulder. You look at Rishame Woodley. Assen, for the beautiful cathedral of speed that it is, it's got this dark side to it of these gravel traps, and you hit those gravel traps at ridiculously fast speeds because that's the big attraction of the circuit, is the fast flowing nature of it. But with that comes the consequence of, if you get it wrong, you're in a Bezzecchi situation. Bezzecchi got lucky from that situation. Sometimes you don't always get that lucky. So a lot for Marc to come in, and it did look like it was a Marc in management mode this weekend. But apart from that, I also saw, and I've said it before, talking about like John Coetzee earlier, Marc's also got his vulnerabilities. And I said after he came back from the surgery, and that again, Marc's time of getting away with things is really coming to an end now. And I think I saw that again this weekend. I said I saw it at Le Mans when I saw Marc come out and he was kind of like just cruising in those first practice sessions, like really this Marc that now has to manage things a lot better because he just can't get away with things as much as he did before. And I saw it again at Assen this weekend. I think he was physically and mentally just drained, so it was a case of bringing it home. But I also saw a rider that was in the back of his mind going, Jesus, don't land up in that kitchen. Whatever you do, even if you lose points to Bez and Martin, just don't land up in the kitchen. We're going to Sachsenring. I get a week break to recover. And then after Sachsenring, I love. I can go win there. I can be competitive there. Then I've got time off to really recover. Don't do anything stupid at Assen. And if I look how he was bullied, talking about Michael Pelosa, talking about the Digi pass. If I look at how he was bullied by Digi multiple times, Digi bullied him, got the long lap in, and then still came and bullied him again in the same chicane. Marc doesn't get bullied easily. This weekend he got bullied. He got bullied by Ai Ogura, he got bullied by Pedro Acosta, he got bullied by Digi. And listen, as a Marc Marquez fan, I didn't like to watch it, but I love to see it. I want riders, to go to Mark and say, move out the way. If you're managing things, I'm not. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Mark's option to go with a soft rear tire kind of tells you a lot. It's like, I don't really have it on the medium. I've got to take whatever advantage I can. So it was a management weekend for Mark. Seventh is not Mark management, but points on the board. Comes out of the weekend, didn't lose any points, still 40 points behind, albeit to a new championship leader. Gained on Bezzecchi at the end of the day, but biggest thing I think is coming out in one piece.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think one thing you maybe not have highlighted, I think Mark this weekend showed a little bit of vulnerability. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think he played the safe game, but I think he showed vulnerability, which probably since 2013 when he came to MotoGP, he's never shown that.
Great point.
Even on those last Honda years, he would ride the thing till he crashed. He wasn't going to show anything. And I do think we've seen a little bit. And guys like Martin are going to take advantage of that. Diggia took advantage of it. What I love about Marc Marquez, afterwards he says, racing incidents.
Yeah.
Take the punishments, fall one place behind. I took a shortcut. Racing incidents. He doesn't cry because they pushed him. But anyway, he loves to race. He's not scared to race. He dishes it. He takes it as much as he dishes it. But I do think this weekend was a vulnerable Mark. And Bezzecchi, Ai Ogura, Diggia, they took advantage of that, which is what you got to do. When there's weakness, take advantage. Bezzecchi made a mistake by not doing that on Sunday. And I think you're quite right. Mark in the back of his head knows Sachsenring, all things being equal, should be a good weekend for him. Maybe Bezzecchi's going to stand up and say, Mark should take 37 points this weekend. But yeah, I just think he was a little bit vulnerable this weekend. And the guys that needed to take advantage of it, they did, except for Bezzecchi.
Shout out to Stephen Undal, just quickly from Ground Furrows. Absolutely, Stephen Undal just doing a great job, World Endurance Racing and in the Spanish Championship. So brilliant stuff there from him. Paul, I think you've nailed it perfectly there. The word vulnerability is perfect because, Mark gets passed like that by a Diggia or on that, and he passes straight back. But again, going back to the comment I made where I think Mark knows those times of overriding and getting away with things is gone. So when Diggia makes this pass, he looks at it and he goes, I want to fight back. I want to just shove it on his inside and go. But I think Mark's weighing up risk versus reward a lot more now. I don't think he ever did before, to be honest. I think it was just all risk, and the reward came with it, luckily. But now it's weighing up that time, It's a long championship still. He's got himself back into it come hell or high water, through the mistakes of Bez, through whatever, through him winning. Take nothing away from Mark, but he's there to go throw it away at Assen would have just been something stupid, heading into almost back to back. A week break in MotoGP is nothing. These guys go home, they don't lie on the sofa for 3 days. They go home, take 2 hours, and they're back on the bicycle and back in the gym training. So I think he did the right thing. As frustrating as it must have been for him to pick up seventh and be beaten by the likes of, Enea Bastianini, for instance. He was being bullied by Bastianini on a KTM, for goodness sake. But that's the reality of what Mark's got to deal with now. And I said it at Lamar, he's got to deal with that reality of when it's not there, it's not there, and you've got to take whatever crumbs are left over. And he did it this weekend, kept himself in the race, and it's going to be interesting to see how he manages the rest of these hard weekends going forward. We know he's going to go Sachsenring and be competitive, but at the same time, he's gone to Kota and he's tracked and crashed. He's not made it work, So again, as I said at Lamar, things are just ticking in the mind of Mark a little bit more. Whereas before he just went out and went, bugger that, I'm going this. There's more thought process to it, and I saw it again this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just moving on here. Here we go. And Lovu Manugu. Sorry, but I still think Mark will win it again. He's playing the long game, taking fewer risks while he fully recovers and quietly collecting valuable points. The second half of the season is where he'll be at his strongest because, unlike the others, he won't need time to adapt. That's when he'll make his move. Yeah, brilliant comment. Man, I wish I could say Paul, have a go at that name.
Ndivuo
Individual.
Manugu.
We're gonna call you Indy.
Indy, yeah. Indy, yeah, just Indy for short.
Yeah, Indy for sure. Great
And
comment.
thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and a great comment. Love to see it. So let's just quickly scroll here and see if I can see anything else. Dennis van der Linde, Mark will win this year's championship and deserves to. The GOAT. Trying to see if there's anyone.
Yeah,
Mark,
listen, Rob, I'm also going to say something a little bit controversial here, and I'm a Marc Marquez guy. I think he's going to, not that he doesn't keep throwing out this injury thing. It's the journalists, it's guys like us saying he's not at 100%. Is he ever going to be at 100%? I don't know. He's not a youngster. He's taken some big hits. You have multiple surgeries on the same injury. Your body just can't keep getting regenerating, to a point. So I hope he hasn't got to a point where this is fitness-wise, this is the best we're going to see. I don't know. It's a very difficult one. I think it's personally, I think that's what weighs on his conscience, on his mind, more than getting beaten by a Bezzecchi, Martin. He's thinking to himself, I can't get injured. And James and I have discussed this in the past. He's at a point now where no more. One more big injury could be, never mind career threatening, it could affect the rest of his life. And I honestly believe that as you get a little bit older, that fear of consequence gets a little bit more prominent, where at 20 years old, 22, Pedro Acosta, you don't know about that. Mark at 32 or whatever he sees this because he's lived through it for a while. And I'm not saying for 1 minute it affects him, but in the same breath, I'm saying I think it does. So very difficult one. And I hear what you're saying. So to win the championship, what he's going to do, he's going to play to his strengths. And that's maybe what a guy like Bezzecchi needs to learn to do. So when it isn't a weekend you can win, or when you're expected to win and you have a bad start, take the points. And I think that's where that additional experience. I mean, all these guys are experienced, but Mark's experienced at winning championships. I think that's where it's going to play into his favor for the second half of the year, more so than his outright speed. I think on any given day, almost at every circuit, there are guys that can match him for outright speed. It's how he plays it. Like last week at Brno, digging as deep as he did to make sure Ai Ogura didn't close 0.6 of a second. So I think that's going to be critical for anyone to win this championship. From now, because it's not a 2-horse race that you only have to worry about one guy. There's 4 of them that can win. So you've got to be, now you're racing motorcycles while playing chess at the same time. You're thinking 2 races ahead. Okay, I'm good at that track, or I'm not good, so I need to capitalize, or, like Mark, take it. So I think it's going to be, mentally, this is going to be a game, and speed-wise, A+ game. So it's not straightforward. I don't for a second think that any one of them is going to dominate from now till the end of the year.
I think very justified comments there, and I think it's a justified comment here from Rian Petit. Mark doesn't have to be at 100% to win. Mastermind. And I'm going to highlight that word mastermind because, again, I bring Rossi in to reference it. I think Rossi and Mark have mastered, and what's made them so successful is if you can't win on track, win off it.
Yeah.
And that's what they have done better than anyone else. The Bezzecchis can win on track all day. Like you said, you don't hear a Bezzecchi going into a press conference saying, "Oh, Mark should get it." Like you said, Bezzecchi, but he's not that kind of character, so he won't. But he should go into Sachsenring and go, "Well, if Mark doesn't come out here with 37 points, then there's something wrong with him," and play that game. But they don't. Rossi and Mark are the only ones who play that game, and it's literally to that point. If I can't win on track, I'm not going to show vulnerability, but I'm going to get everyone thinking about me off track. Or I'm going to get them thinking about me while they're on. I'm going to get them thinking, and that's where their strengths have been. So and you can see Mark's doing it. Everything Mark says in his press conferences is tactical. Coming into Hungary, going to Brno, but I don't like turning right. I can't win on right tracks, and then he goes and he goes and wins. So everything's got a place, as you said. That game of chess, everything is a tactical move for. That's a perfect word to use, mastermind. So Rob Mark's move on Pedro at the start of the year got him a drop one position penalty. Why didn't Diggi get the same penalty? Diggi made contact and even went off the track and sent Marc to the gravel. This goes on to the point that Michael Belosa was making earlier on. So Paul, let's get your and again, everyone in the comments, I'll catch up with them. Let's get your thoughts on how you think the Diggi versus Marc thing played out, and penalties and whatever were justified.
Yeah, well, first of all, that's racing. That chicane, we've seen it. I mean, it's happened there on numerous occasions. And if you go back to, I think it was 2015, Marquez, Rossi, same story through the chicane. Okay, I think things were a little bit different. They didn't get penalties or whatever. But I think it was purely a racing incident. Marc left a little bit of space. I say a little bit. I'm not saying he left enough space. Diggi saw the gap. He was definitely on a faster pace. Then I think Marc turned in conveniently and Diggi turned in a little bit less. So he knew he'd stand Marc up. It's a safe place, if there is such a thing, to stand a guy up, because you're going to have to run through the gravel. He's not going to hit a concrete barrier. So, yeah, racing incident. Penalty-wise, I just want to quickly mention the penalty Pecco got on Saturday's sprint race. Martin definitely moved over to block Pecco from passing him on the right. That's racing. So I think that, yes, I understand, and I've said it many times, the rules are the rules. But to me, Pecco's wheel touched the green, half the wheel.
Yeah.
He had got squeezed. He had no option. It's more dangerous for him to roll the gas off, because then you're going to have a Pedro Costa, Alex Marquez story where the oak behind's not expecting it. So a difficult one. So these penalties, when we've got proper racing incidents, I understand you can't do one and not do the other. So it's very difficult, Rob. I don't know, especially a place like that, because when you come out the second part of the chicane, you flat on the gas. Now, so with a case like Diggi, he can't suddenly move over and drop a place to let Marc go back, because the oaks behind them, they're racing. So when you get a long lap penalty, I think that's the safe way of dealing with it. I still think it's a racing incident, but this thing where there's contact has become quite now contact's just, you can't do it. So, I think it was the penalty was correct, because we saw there was definitely contact. It's a difficult one. It's a chicane, there's right, left. So I don't know. I just think that we've got to a point where, and a lot of the riders have said it, we still want to race. We don't want it to be a thing that when you hear the guy behind you, you have to keep left kind of so they can pass.
Yeah.
Difficult one, but I do think the penalty, it's how it is. That's, we've seen it on numerous occasions where maybe the comment made was Pedro didn't have to drop back one, or he dropped back one, he didn't get a long lap penalty. So are they looking at the severity of it? Diggi generally has a clean sheet, so he's not the kind of guy that you say, but it's week in and week out. Maybe a la Marc Marquez 5 or 6 years ago or something. So, a difficult one. But I do think purely a racing incident, and me as a fan, that's what we want to see. Don't punt the oak off. That's unfair. But they're racing. They, ask no quarter, give no quarter.
So I look at it and I go, I don't know, a lot of people say, Simon Crafar needs to be more consistent, and Simon Crafar has definitely brought more stability and consistency to these decisions. At one stage, Freddie Spencer just lost it all, and I think unfortunately Simon Crafar is now a victim of the Freddie Spencer and MotoGP era. MotoGP dug themselves a hole with this rule book. And now exactly what happened there. Simon Crafar gives Marc Marquez the penalty, and Indonesia got to drop a penalty. I think really deep down, Simon Crafar would go exact same as us. Well, it's racing, but my job and the rule book I have to go by kind of tells me I've got to give a penalty here. And I think the exact same thing played out with Diggi and Marc there. A little bit naughty from Diggi. He knew exactly what he was doing. He went in there. It was very late. If you watch it again, Marc's already kind of committed. Diggi comes in very late. But again, credit to Marc. He doesn't shake his head and throw his arms in there. Doesn't come afterwards and cry about it. He carries on. So in modern MotoGP, it's a penalty. It's a penalty all day. Diggi took it, did it, and through he came. So it's a tough one. It's what we have to deal with. Unfortunately, I agree with you. The pick of Bagnaia in the sprint race is just ridiculous. It's absolutely, that got me more pissed off than the Digi one, to be honest. Because as you said,
correct.
in that incident, what do you want Pecco to do? Roll off, which is the most
100%.
unsafe thing you can do. Did Pecco gain any advantage by going on that green? No. He finished in the exact same position he was when he was on track.
Yeah, correct.
So, that irritates me more. The DG one, as soon as it happened, I went, there's going to be a penalty.
Yeah.
For me, there's no penalty because a la Marc and Rossi all those years ago, you kind of just deal with it. Some races, you're going to be the one doing it, dishing it. Some races, you're going to be the victim of it. That's how racing happens. But modern day MotoGP dictates that. What I will do is, and I want to throw it back onto this comment here from John Kotze. What's your thoughts on Digi's mental strength? He seems to give as much as he gets, maybe even Digi for the championship. So I'm gonna highlight this. So Digi gets that penalty. First of all, he's got the balls. It's not the first time he's done this to Marc this year. Won't be he's got the balls to go, I'm shoving it on the inside of Marc here. I'm going. And he went, paid the price, got a penalty, but then he does it again. So you've just had your wrist slapped by the headmaster.
Yeah.
So don't do that again. And then he almost in the same corner to prove a point goes, okay, well, watch me. I'll do it again. So when John's asking, what do you think of Digi's mental strength? I saw him at Le Mans and I asked him the same kind of question. Like, you were in a very bad place not so long ago, and now you seem to just have overturned it, and you've turned into this, sometimes maybe too confident machine. And he's just like, I'm loving life. I've worked hard to get where I am now, and I'm going to take full advantage of that. And credit to him. He's in the run for the championship, no doubt about it. I still wouldn't
16 points behind, eh?
Yeah, I know. It's nothing. I still don't have that, and I wish I did. I still don't have that ultimate flavor, because you've always been a Digi ambassador, Paul, to your credit. I've always had this, I've become a Digi fan. I really have. I will commit to a Digi fan club shirt and cap happily. I still don't talk as him as a final championship contender, if you know what I mean. I still can't see yellow confetti going at the end of the season with Digi. It just seems a little bit too out of the realms of possibility to me. And it shouldn't, because at the moment he's doing everything right. He's consistent. He's aggressive. He's fast. He's got the recipe to be a world champion. I just don't know if it's, it's great that you're finishing fourths and fifths and you're consistent. But as you said, if you look at a Martin, you've got to be on that podium almost week in, week out if you're going to win a current MotoGP World Championship. You can't be anything other than that. And he just lacks that. But again, to answer the question, John, mentality's there. I loved how he was just brave enough, and that not just this weekend, at previous weekends, to go up against Marc, to go up against who's ever in front of him. I'm Digi and I'm going for it. And you can't take that away from him. Loved it.
Yeah, Rob, he's definitely turned the corner in terms of his want, desire, belief, because go back to Barcelona, gets taken out by Martin in the first corner, gets on the bike, finishes, did he finish 12th, I think? He knew he could finish. The bike was okay. He's in it for the results. So I think what's happened with him, and I agree with you fully, Rob, I'd love to see him win. I've loved him for a long time. I don't know if he can.
Yeah.
But what he does is he's very similar to Ai Ogura, but even maybe one step less, where he's always getting into Q2. He's always in the front row or two after qualifying, but almost invisibly. At the beginning of the year, he had 2 or 3 pole positions, but he's not a raw guy. He's not in your face. I don't know what the right phrase is, but he's chipping away. I mean, he's won 1 this year. He's got a few wins in him still. I'm 100% sure of that. But what he does is he focuses solely on, I think his target is the end game. And he's definitely in this championship, 100%. After the first 3, I mean, he's been the leading Ducati from day one. After the second or third round, he was the leading Ducati, but he was quite far. We were like, yeah, he's there, but Marc's injured and blah, blah, blah. We made excuses as to why he was there. Now there's no excuses. Pecco's had no issues. Marc's had his issues, but he's won twice, so it shows he should be more consistent. Digi is there week in and week out. So, yeah, I think he's a genuine title contender. Maybe a very quiet one, and a lot of cards are going to have to fall his way for him to win it. But that doesn't mean he can't. 100% he believes he's going to win this championship. And his consistency, we've said it, just be consistent. Remember, Jean Mir won the championship, won one race. Digi's won his one race, so he's ticked that box. Now all he has to do is keep chipping away, and I honestly think he's a genuine chance. Last year, Marc dominated. Alex ran in second the whole year. At no point did we discuss Alex as a serious contender to win the championship. We might have discussed Martin, we might have discussed Pecco Bagnaia, but not Alex. We said, he's doing great and he's showed us but we never said he's going to win this. I firmly believe Digi, Bez, Martin, Marc Marquez, Ai Ogura, we're wrong. There are 5 of them. 5 who can genuinely, any one of them is going to win it. I don't think 6th, I think is Pedro Acosta. I don't believe he can. Those 5, any one of them can win it.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. Like I said, I feel bad not fully getting behind Digi because I'm utterly impressed with where he's come from and what he's done. You know, he was always the scapegoat of MotoGP and was always fighting for his future, and he's done that. And I loved how he's taken to the challenge. But Rob, Digi's penalty wasn't for the move; it was for cutting the chicane and gaining an advantage. So I didn't even think of it like that, to be honest. And you're absolutely right. From that point of view, as I said, it was a hard move. And in modern day MotoGP, you're absolutely right. I think as you said, if not only using the Marc and Pedro as a direct comparison, there's been many more. From that point of view, you're absolutely right. There should have been another penalty then. Yes, he got the penalty for not losing more than 1 second or whatever. But in terms of the actual move that he put on Marc, yeah, no, that I didn't even think of it like that, to be honest. But yes, for me, another penalty then. So either drop 1 position or another long lap penalty should have definitely happened. Those green penalty strips in the chicane exit was infuriating. James, and I'll probably speak for all of us, I've lost track of what color means what. There's green, there's blue, there's pink, there's purple.
It's only green that counts.
Senna Aegis at one stage was more off track than on track in Moto 2. And he was in the results, gratefully so, because like I said, I just want to see them race. But he was coming out of, remember Brad Binder a couple of years ago, came out of that one right-hander, went on and got penalized, and I think Pecco as well. That's now blue. It's now blue. It's not even green. So Senna Aegis just railed that every single lap. And I was like, I was getting very confused. I was watching the Moto 2 race because the MotoGP guys weren't too bad. But I was watching the Moto 2 race and I was like, but hang on, these guys are spending more time on the blue stuff than the black stuff. It was very weird. And I want to go to this question here. Digi's a dark horse. Gabe's 23. Absolutely. Well, yeah. Yes and no for me, but yes for many people in the comments here, which is great. Andre KC9DR. Crazy how Bez got banned for the race. If the slap was so bad, KTM's breaking down doesn't seem to be a danger at all. Like I kind of made touch on that last time, Paul, is like, Bez fully justified getting race banned, but there's other safety things that I've seen in MotoGP on track that I look at and I go, geez, if you're giving a full race ban for a slap on a marshal, then the Ai Ogura nearly severing Pedro Acosta at Catalunya maybe should be more. Sean and Roddy, good. Sean and Ronnie, hope to see you at Silverstone this year. Good mates here in the UK. What's going on with KTM? Keep cutting out. Let's jump onto KTM then, Paul, because 80% of the comments have been about obviously Brad Binder, naturally being South Africans and stuff, but KTM in general. There was a comment earlier about Pedro Acosta and how he must be feeling watching another rider in Ai Ogura winning a MotoGP race before he does, and knowing that the talent that's there. Pedro's just got to be patient now that it's come out that he has officially signed with Ducati. The news is starting to break. Pecco Bagnaia, for those that haven't seen, has officially left Ducati and has officially signed for Aprilia. So all those kind of news that we know of is definitely going to come out now. As I said, Martin and Ai Ogura, Yamaha probably going to be the next ones coming out, and then the roles is going to happen. But looking at KTM again, Paul, I mean it's not a pretty picture. It really isn't. Pedro Acosta, again, technical issues. I think Brad probably had a couple more technical issues that we probably don't even know about. And Ai Ogura was probably the only shining light for KTM this weekend. He had a pretty decent weekend. Maverick Vinales but this is the picture that KTM's painting.
Yeah.
So Maverick Vinales comes out and says, if I'm not in MotoGP next year, it's because of KTM. Now, this is a typical Maverick thing to say. And it's a wrong thing to say, but there's a little bit of justification in what he's saying, Paul, because Brad Binder could go, and this is where Brad Binder is the utter professional, and this is where Maverick Vinales is not. Yes, there's a bit of justification in what Maverick's saying, because Pedro could say the same, and Ai Ogura could say the same, Brad Binder could say the same, and Maverick could say the same. Yes, their futures have been massively dented and halted by KTM's low performance and KTM getting it wrong. But you don't go out and say it. Brad Binder probably has on many times, and Pedro Acosta has many times wanted to come out and say things, but you don't. You don't bite the hand that feeds. While Maverick's not just biting the hand that feeds, he's biting the whole thing. And this has turned into a war of words. So if Maverick had any chance of staying with Tech 3, that is now definitely gone. There's no two ways about it. Because I like how Gunther Steiner came out and used some Spanish word that called Maverick Vinales a beggar, But anyway, on track, it's terrible. Off track, it's terrible. They're losing Pedro Acosta. I mean, the only shining light for KTM is somehow, by some divine miracle, and that miracle being a big checkbook, I think, they've secured Alex Marquez and Diggia Antonio for next year. That is all they have to look forward to, because this year, I think you can just write it off. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. They've ruined Pedro Acosta. Whatever chance he had remotely of staying in the championship, as you said, is now gone. Okay, he's had carpal tunnel, but that's probably from wrestling this KTM around for the whole year. Gone for successful surgery. Cool, we'll be back for Saxony. Mechanical problems detuned the bikes to try and coincide or limit the damage of these mechanical problems. And it's not only it's mechanical, it's electronic. I don't even think they actually know what's really going on. And Mark Lloyd from Brad's side of the team said hello, Uncle Rob, earlier, and hello, Mark. Thank you for joining us. And I know you probably can't say too much as well because employed by KTM, but it's just not a great picture. I do feel sorry for Pedro Acosta. I feel sorry for Brad Binder. Maverick, a battle to feel sorry for because he's had so many great opportunities. Bastianini is getting on with it. He's signed a Trackhouse. He's landed his arse in butter, but it's not a great picture. It really isn't.
Yeah, and Rob, it's been kind of a week in, week out story. Pedro's been their shining light, but the last few races he's had lots of issues. And I know they came out and said no, it was because he hit the rumble strip too hard, and then went into wind mode or whatever. Is that them not just making an excuse? That's how we, as the lay person watching, start thinking. You're like, we're not idiots. It's the same problem that you had 2 weeks ago. And be that as it may, KTM are definitely in a world of hurt. As you've said, Maverick has said what many of us feel. I just think Maverick being Maverick, it can never be about him, which I think what he should have done was maybe in a more circumspect way, and it's just not Maverick. He didn't do it for his whole career. He doesn't seem to want to help resolve the problem. He just creates problems where, yes, Brad probably feels the same. He keeps quiet. And one thing we would know almost 100%, Brad will be trying to improve things, make things better. What can we change? What can we do? Where it seems to be Maverick just throws a hand grenade in the middle of the room, lets it explode and walks out. And that's it. It's not his problem. It's KTM's problem. And I think what it does for the collective, it causes more, there's a disconnect between everyone. So now nobody seems to have an idea. And I think that's a problem. Pedro, if he gets to a point like Quartararo where he just gives up, this project's going to fall flat way before the end of the year. So they're in a difficult situation. We said it at Aprilia. They got to manage Maverick in a different way. I don't think you can manage that. I'm changing my tune. I think he's unmanageable. Yeah. And they won't get rid of him halfway through the year, a la Zarco or whoever. But maybe that would be the right thing right now, is for Gunther to say, listen, you're not happy, we're not happy. We'll pay you for the rest there. Pack your bags and leave because you're toxic. Yeah. That's all I can think of with Maverick. And yeah, it's a different team to Brad, but it's the same team. It's KTM. And I think they're in a world of hurt. They don't know which direction to go. And what he's doing doesn't help. So not a great situation. And what do we see out of this from Brad? The maturity, the professionalism. He doesn't go and slate anyone. He just carries on doing what he does. But unfortunately, it's not doing him any favors whatsoever.
Now, Maverick Vinales has just proved he's just not that team player, is he? At Yamaha wasn't a team player. At Aprilia wasn't a team player. KTM now, and he's quite happy to just down tools when it's. Where he's even finishing. As I said in last week's show, I think you got to admire the self-confidence of the guy for him to be talking the way he does when you're finishing stone last and stuff. But anyway, that exercise has got to be over. But Rob Rott makes another very valid point here with the KTM. I agree that KTM is going to kill someone, and I know that's tongue in cheek. But this comment here, Brew, if I'm behind that KTM, I'm pulling out of that slipstream. Surprised that riders haven't said we're not racing, and it's a very valid point that he makes. I know it's exaggerated there, but. You think of a rider and you climb into that KTM slipstream now. Are you 100%? I remember in a couple of races that I used to do, there were a couple of those riders and machines that you got behind and you went, I don't know what I'm going to get here. Or if I got the pit board, there were riders' names that I said, you tell me if that rider's behind me because I don't know what, you kind of brace for impact. There are those kind of things where me certainly as a rider, I went, I can't fully trust this process. And exactly what a couple of comments were said. They're so strict with so many things. Surely Dorna should be going to KTM and saying, right now, I don't know, sit out a race meeting until you sort this out. They have not gone one race weekend in the past, 4 or 5 race weekends now? Since Catalunya, really, without any issue.
Yeah.
Something's got to be done there. Sure. I know from Dorna's point of view, they can't just have 4 slots missing off the grid and no KTMs there. But I don't know, there's got to be something that you start at the back of the grid, or there's got to be something to kind of really put the foot down with KTM and say this is unacceptable. You're putting the lives of other riders and manufacturers in danger here, and it's at this level it's just not good enough.
Yeah. So it's definitely a concern. But then KTM's argument would be, well, look at Bastianini. There's nothing wrong with his bike. Brad might not have won, but his bike was fine. But the greater picture is not good for them. So there's clearly something going on that they are unable at the moment to resolve. And I think the worst thing is that one weekend it is Pedro, one weekend it is Brad. If it was only Pedro or only Maverick, you could say, well, possibly him or his team are the issue. But it's haphazard. So, it's definitely an issue that they need to sort out.
Olimoto, good point. KTM should get rid of Vinales and bring back Pole for the rest of the year. Kind of your sentiments there, Paul. I think I agree with that. We'll get on to Brad Binder now. He has a comment from @SAPX7OD in the land of YouTube. Rob, how are you doing? Regards from India. Is there any remote chance for Brad to go to Moto2 next year for 1-year contract and then maybe get back to MotoGP in 2028? So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the comments. I'm doing very well. Thank you. And thank you for your comment and supporting us. I thought about it a couple of rounds ago, and for a split second, it sounded like a great idea. And then I was like, the reality is not going to happen. I think I mentioned it in last week's show or the show before that, where what's this possibility of Brad potentially going back to Moto2, winning Moto2, and then the fact is Brad could go back to Moto2 now, win it, and he wouldn't get a chance back in MotoGP. I think Brad is unfortunately at that point now where, well, I say that, so there's a lot of comments here, Paul, from what's going to happen with Brad. Where is Brad going to go? A lot of people very angry with KTM in the comments, rightfully so, because he has been let down. KTM have let down Brad to the point where it's looking like Brad's not going to be in MotoGP next year. And he has a valid comment to say it's because of KTM. He won't say it, but he has the valid comment because 100%. He's absolutely right if he did say that. The realistic options now, I'm buoyed by the fact that Aruba Ducati is being mentioned. I think that could be great. I think Brad in factory Ducati and World Superbikes would go and be very competitive. probably win it, take it all, to be honest, because he's got that amount of talent. And if you look at what Bulliga and Lackawanna are doing in World Superbikes at the moment, they're a step above the rest. Brad's biggest problem there is he's competing with Franco Morbidelli, who, results-wise, Brad is a step above. The fact is he's Italian. It's an Italian-run team. That just kind of paints the perfect picture. Jack Miller's another rider that he's competing with there. And I know the likes of Kawasaki have been mentioned talking to Brad. Bimota have now signed their 2 riders in Alex Lowe's and Axel Bassani. So nothing going on there. A Barney Ducati could be a potential. That the problem is you're not going to get the money that Brad would potentially want from a Barney Ducati. No disrespect to Yari Montella. I mentioned it a few shows ago. If Yari Montella is finishing on the podium weekend on a Barney Ducati in World Superbikes, Brad could go easily do the same and better. So there's definitely a few options for Brad. It's whatever financially and mentally and energetically makes the good reading for Brad. It's got to be something. He's got to be well compensated. I can't see him going and doing a BMW World Superbike or a Honda World Superbike, who I'm sure have reached out to Brad. What's he going to do? Go and I think he'll be better than a Petrucci and Miguel Oliveira. No disrespect to them, but what is better? 4th, 5th week, trying to battle against these Ducatis. It's Brad wants to go somewhere. He's done enough of this hard graft.
He's done his apprenticeship.
He needs to climb into a team that's ready to go win. Not a team that's kind of there, but he needs to go climb in a team and win and showcase his true talent. Because at the moment there's all these question marks around him. Some may be justified, a lot of them not. It's purely down to KTM and what he's done and what he's been through and where they've put him now. He needs to go somewhere where he can say, right, you want to see the real Brad Binder? I'll show you the real Brad Binder, and just dominate everything. And I think he's got that ability to do it. Unfortunately, the more you look at it, he's definitely out of the KTM fold. Tech 3 is most likely going to be Senna, Aegis, and potentially looks like Luca Marini is going to be that second rider. It's crazy to think that Manuel Gonzalez is now not in the running again. Looks like he's going to BMW World Superbikes by the looks of it, which is just, you just can't believe it. The form that he's been on, but that's the brutality of MotoGP at the moment. So from a South African point of view, Brad Binder, another challenging weekend, made the most of it, got a, in his words, that's the most vocal I've heard Brad about a penalty before. His long lap warning, track limits warning came up on his dash, didn't go, so he couldn't monitor his tire pressure, and he got a tire pressure penalty, which ultimately bumped him down to 11th. So again, just these kicks in the head that Brad just keeps getting and getting and getting, no matter what he does. So I do feel for him. Hasn't been able to show his true quality. Saxon Ring is a track that he's loved in the past, dominated in Moto 3, Moto 2. Hopefully something can happen there. But if not, go and enjoy the summer break as much as he can and come back and just keep fighting the fight, which he'll continue to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I did read a post regarding Brad was that by the end of the summer break, he'd have more clarity as to what his future is or will be. Personal opinion, if he doesn't get a ride in MotoGP, which, as we've discussed, looks highly unlikely, I would like to see him World Superbikes on a Ducati. As we've mentioned, it's been spoken about that there was possibility of going to factory Honda. Yeah, that's not Brad. That's doing what he's doing now, filling up spaces. The Honda's not competitive. He needs to be, as I said, he's served his apprenticeship. He's not a Remy Gardner kind of guy who's going to go there and, make up the numbers. I think he deserves a good ride. I'd love to see him on the Aruba Ducati, just so we could say, told you so, because I think he would. As you say, if Lecchiona's doing that well, I think Brad is a far better talent. But certainly looks like that MotoGP door is almost firmly shut. The only thing is, we had discussed it last week, possible test rider role. We discussed it. We're not saying it's out there, but possibly with this injury to Zarco, and we don't want to see that happen. But if there's a possibility that maybe a team like LCR would look at Brad, this is new to them. They won't know yet what's going on with Zarco. But it might, we need that door just to open a fraction to get Brad's foot in. You never know. And hopefully, if it is due to the injury of Zarco, if it keeps Brad there, I'm all for it. But in all fairness, it's looking very, very slim.
Yeah, Boycano asking, so is it official, confirmed that Brad will not be in MotoGP next year? It's not official yet, Boycano. It's officially unofficial type thing. I mean, you put the puzzles together and they just don't match. If you know what I mean. There's too many names. If you look at Moto2 on the weekend, Senna Aegis is a big talent that MotoGP teams will want to sign up.
Alonso.
Daniel Gardo is still a question. I think he's found himself very fortunate to be going to a senior Ducati ride. Jean Mir, people have been commenting about Jean Mir in the comments. Probably the luckiest man on this planet to be on senior Ducati. Really, I know he's a MotoGP world champion and there's a talent there. I know how fast he is, but 2 DNFs again.
And I mean, lap 1, lap 2.
It's incredible. Bastianini, beat Brad again this weekend, but Brad more often than not has also competed against him or certainly been there. He finds himself on a Trackhouse Aprilia ride. Luca Marini, for all he's good, going to be with Tech 3. Why they would, I don't know. There's a couple of head scratches there. There's no doubt about it. But as you said, the LCR could potentially be something. I don't know if Bob Moore and Brad's team have spoken out there, but the Aruba Ducati one just entices me. But as Oli Moto says there, it's going to be very hard with Frankie Morbidelli. Morbidelli was at the Mazzano round a couple of races ago. I know he was there as the Italian guy with him and Pecco, but could he have been there to be dotting the I's and crossing the T's? I don't know. But I would love to see Brad there because you look at the opportunity that Iker Lecuona has been given there. Then when Alex Marquez or someone's injured, Brad Binder goes and does a Ducati wildcard ride. And again, you're going from Pirelli to Pirelli. So it'll be a much easier exercise than doing a wildcard on MotoGP. I would love to see that because I do feel there's unfinished business there for Brad. But only time will tell. We have to be patient. Brad came out and said, Kana will be announced after the summer break, potentially what he's going to do in the future. I think the summer break, there's going to be a lot of conversations happening. So let's see. Let's just hope that's not only the end of Brad's MotoGP career, but not the end of speaking about Brad Binder racing, which it could potentially be if he doesn't get what he kind of wants or what he thinks is something that'll give him enough energy to keep going, because it is a lot to deal with. So let's hope it's not the end of the Brad Binder conversation, because there's lots to be done there. I know a lot of people have their question marks over Brad, looking at the facts, which are the lack of podiums, the lack of a couple of things, and you can't argue with that. But we know deep down, we all, as South Africans, know there's a lot more there, and it needs to come out and be shown. So. Yeah, it's frustrating that we can't give you any more information, but what you know is what we know.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you think about Brad, he hasn't qualified well. To me, that's been his biggest Achilles heel.
Absolutely.
And then on a Sunday, sprint races, that's sometimes he has great races, but Sunday races, more often than not, Brad will come from 16th qualifying, if not in the top 10, close to the top 10. He's definitely, we've always said it, we've known it for his whole career. He's a Sunday man. And, unfortunately, we see it, but the powers that be don't seem to be seeing it. And, if we could have a poll and send it off to them saying, vote for our guy, it's just not happening, though. And unfortunately, we've said it many times, Rob, that loyalty seems to have come back and bitten him a little bit. So a disappointment should he not have a ride. But let's also not preempt anything. Maybe he's got a surprise card that nobody knows about. I do think by the end of the summer break, if not his future, everyone else's futures will be more clear, which will give us a better picture. So let's see what happens.
Gavin Sheldon as Bob Moore is his manager. Let's get him on the show. Why did he not walk the paddock in 2024 and look for a better ride, or did he and there was nothing? Gavin, I mean, I've made a note here to reach out to Bob. The fact is, you're going to get him on the show, and he's going to be limited to what he can and can't say.
And answering that question, Rob, Brad's been on a 4-year contract. So this goes back, as we said last or the time before, Brad signed that contract when KTM and Brad Binder were third in the championship, very competitive, or fourth in the championship. first non-Ducati when Ducati were dominating. So at the time it was the right thing. But for whatever reason, whether the bike has changed too much or whatever, we don't know. But so at the time, we were all like, wow, this is fantastic. 4 years, this is going to smoke them. But it's backfired on him. So that's why I say that loyalty. So it wasn't 2024. If it was, I think Brad would have, in hindsight, would have said to Bob Moore, put me on that Aprilia. So unfortunately it was, I think he signed the deal in 2022. So it was 23, 24. So that's going back, as I said, when KTM and Brad Binder were specifically the next best. So they did the right thing. In hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, no, it was a cuck thing. I mean, look at Pecco signing a 4-year deal with Aprilia. Who knows, in 2 years' time, they might be the KTMs of the pack then. Then he's going to be like, oh, no, what do we do now? So it's right, but it's wrong. It's so fickle. You're trying to secure your future.
Yeah.
And you're trying to read into, it's unless you're a Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo, to his credit, has been able to sort massive contracts on a 2-year deal for a guy. Yeah, he's special, but I mean, he's not, he's a one-time world champion. Pecco's a 2-time world champion in MotoGP. Eh? So, the draw card is less now. So it's a big problem, but, we don't understand the pressures these guys are under to secure their futures. Where, if you've got a full-time job wherever you work, generally, once you're employed in South Africa, you're there until you resign or get fired. So if you do nothing wrong, you won't get fired. And hopefully you continue till you choose to leave. MotoGP is not like that.
No.
In your second, look at Jack Miller. He's lived from second year to second year of his whole career. How stressful that is. They got bonds to pay, cell phone accounts, got to put food on, so these guys, when they get an opportunity to secure their future and they're doing well, they're like, yes, this makes sense. So, it's, at the time, Brad did the right thing. In hindsight, we all saying, yes, he shouldn't have done that. As I say, Pecco might be shooting himself in the foot right now.
Yeah, it's also hard when you get that piece of paper in front of you with a lot of zeros on it.
Yeah.
It's hard to, and as you said, everything was going uphill. It was just the trajectory was going one way. And you look at it, from a business sense of point of view, Brad's looked after himself and his family for the rest of his life. So from that point of view, it was good. From a career path point of view, it didn't work out, but certainly from a financial point, it worked out well. This is why we have good educational people on the show. Rafael da Costa, Superbike is Michelin next year.
Yeah, that's right.
Very good point. We completely forgot about that. So, Rafael, thank you so much for correcting us. But don't do that again, because we will give you a double long lap penalty. Okay. Can't correct the hosts of the show. There's a comment here also. Any thoughts about Brad joining Daz in America? I saw someone put on Facebook something about Brad potentially going to Moto America, and I saw Courtney dismissed it straight away. Every time I speak to Brad, he's a homeboy, so if nothing's going to work out properly in World Superbikes, where I think the money will be a lot better than Moto America type thing, he'll go home to South Africa. He wants to go home to South Africa. He wants to take his family home to South Africa. He wants to be with his family in South Africa, and off he goes. Darren's found Darren's loving life in America, from what I hear. He found his kind of thing, but I don't know. It's a very big move to make from MotoGP to Moto America. So I can't see that happening. I can honestly only see a competitive, well-paid ride in World Superbikes being Brad's only move. And if you can't get that, stay at home in South Africa, keep himself nice and fit, and make himself available for fill-in replacement rides when need be, if possible. Is how I see the picture for Brad Binder going forward. So let's see what happens there. Paul, I want to end the show off touching on Toprak Razgatlioglu. Didn't have the results again this weekend. Unlucky with whatever problems he had. But I've been very impressed with Toprak the last couple of rounds, because he's definitely the reference for Yamaha now. More often than not, he's ahead of Fabio Quartararo, especially come Sunday race day. Jack Miller coming out and say we learned a lot from, or we have to learn a lot from what Toprak was able to do at Hungary, the way he was able to stop the bike for those chicanes. We look at it and we have to figure out how he's doing it. When you become the reference as a rookie, it's very impressive. And his back was against the wall coming into the season. New tracks, Yamaha, the worst they've ever been. Michelin tires, everything. If those times that were released from the 850 test at Brno have relevance to them, Toprak showed some pretty good times there. So anyway, I just want to give a shout out to Toprak because I think he deserves a little bit of screen time. I know he doesn't get probably as much as he should on race weekends, but if you dive deep into the sectors, into the lap time, into not necessarily just the overall results, he was in a points scoring position again, 11th, right with Brad before he had the problems that he did. I know what Ollie Motor's saying here, unless Yamaha can produce a vastly superior bike next season, it's going to be a struggle for Toprak again. But I do feel that next year is going to be the clean slate, and I do think Yamaha will be better. I'm not necessarily saying they're going to go all out, but Toprak, Ai Ogura, Jorge Martin, something's got to click from that. Pirelli tires, something's got to click. Less aero, something's got to click, and I think Toprak is going to benefit from that. And yeah, I'm just a huge fan of Toprak, and I don't think what's being put out there is a true reflection of how well he's actually doing.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And I said it, I think, last week or the week before. The Yamaha is not allowing him to showcase his talent. He's putting, as you say, every now and again, Quartararo will out-qualify him, but generally he out-races Quartararo. And I like the fact that he gets on and does what he has to do. Yes, Quartararo is the big star in the team, and I can honestly say 2 years ago when he signed that contract, I believe Yamaha told him how good they were going to be, and he signed the contract, and they haven't delivered. So now he's like, okay, F you, Oaks, I'm done with you. You've BS'd me for the last 18 months. Enough. Toprak's not in that position call him the star rider. So he's plodding away every week. He's still brand new at this. It's his 10th round in MotoGP. He's still learning. But what I like about him, he's kind of also like Ai Ogura. Doesn't wreck his back. He hasn't got a hell of a lot to say. Yes, the results haven't been there, but he's not dissing this oak and tuning that oak. He's just doing what he has to do. Yeah, he didn't have a great weekend. Chatter on the one side of the bike, which I couldn't really wrap my head around. I think he said when he went around left-hand corners, it chattered badly. But anyway, I think the Yamaha's not allowing him. Hopefully next year he gets a package that moves him half a step closer to the front of the package, because there's no doubt. We saw what he did on that BM in World Superbikes, and nobody has been able to replicate that. That shows the talent of the man. The bike is not allowing him to show his talent, and that's disappointing because it's there. But it's a similar situation to Brad. You can only deal with the tools you're given. He can't now slap an Aprilia chassis and a Yamaha motor or whatever it is. I'm being a bit stupid now, but so he's kind of limited, very limited. So it's a difficult situation for him, and we just hope next year things improve dramatically, because Yamaha, as much as we slate KTM, Yamaha just haven't moved at all, and we discussed it a while ago. Since Quartararo's been the head honcho, that bike has progressed zero. Where KTM, Pedro's definitely got it to run close to the front on many occasions, where the Yamaha just doesn't seem to have any clue of how to make this bike better. Also, they're on a brand new bike, first year with a V4. Whether they should have stuck with the inline, that's open for debate. Maybe they never should have. They should have changed years ago. So hopefully the new project is better, level playing field for everybody, and maybe the gap won't be so big as it is right now. So, but very disappointing for Yamaha in general. It's a brand that, go back to Wayne Rainey, even before that, Kenny Roberts Sr., it's a brand that's always been a winner. When last did a Yamaha win a race? I think they said Quartararo won in 2022. Might have been 23 was their last race win. Okay, in all fairness, he should have won at Silverstone, but the bike broke. Fair's fair. No doubt he would have won, but he didn't. So woulda, coulda, shoulda, he didn't. So yeah, very disappointing for a big player like Yamaha. They've dropped the ball properly.
Now we're going to see on Facebook Marketplace tomorrow, James Dench selling all of his Yamahas now after that comment. We've just ruined his life there.
Maybe they should race his bikes. They'll have more chance.
Yeah, actually, they should maybe race James's bike, maybe with James on it in disguise, and they could get better results. That would work. I'm going to end off the show with this question here from Reich Kaula. I hope I'm saying it right. Kaula. Yeah, I don't know. In the land of YouTube. Hi, Uncle Rob. Not sure if already asked, with MotoGP limited now to 850, would World Superbike follow something similar? I don't think so. I can't see it. It's 1000cc production based, so whatever they produce to the market is what they're going to go race there. I know there's the new R9s and all these kind of smaller superbikes which are being raced in Supersport coming out at the moment, but no, I don't think so. World Superbikes is always going to be that 1000cc coming to the market. There's still a small heartbeat of 1000cc production bikes being sold and stuff. So my simple answer to that is no. The 850cc prototypes, let me tell you, they're not going to be far off the 1000cc lap time. They're probably, in some tracks, they might even go faster than them. So it's prototype racing versus production racing as always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paulie, I think that's the perfect way to end because my tummy is starting to talk to me now.
My eyes are getting heavy.
Yeah, it's very late there for you now. What we do need to, Paul, listening to some of your comments there, is we do need to give our international followers a little bit of lingo education into South African. So when you say what tuning oak Luxem, so we need it. Someone in the comments, some South African, we actually just need to put like, I'll put a comment up one day of saying, right, they're saying this is what we're referencing to. When we say, when Paul says tuning, it means just like talking back. When he says oak, it means person, a man. Just for our international viewers, they must sometimes think,
next show we'll only speak the Queen's English.
Please. I still have it now.
Colloquialisms.
It's the funniest thing. I do the same thing like with my football team. I sometimes go, man, stop tuning that oak off. Yeah, what it does. And they go, what? Like, what are you saying, Robert? Never mind. I forgot. I've got to turn my James and Paul mode off, and I've got to turn my English mode on. But as always, Paulie, thank you so much. Everyone that tuned in, great conversation. Absolutely.
But you just said tuned.
Thank you for what do I say?
No, that's the correct context.
It is, tuned as in tuned into the show, not tuned as in you are tuning me.
I tune you what to do.
Yes. We've got to put some dialect up because people are going to lose us.
Otherwise, these international visitors must come and spend a holiday here. Come here in November, December, January. The weather's great. It's a beautiful place. And you'll learn them. You'll learn the colloquialisms in a heartbeat.
You'll quickly learn that South Africa's got 20 languages, not just the one. Looney Tunes, adios. There we go. Everyone, thank you so much again. Paulie, thank you so much. Have a great week off. And until Tuesday after Saxon Ring, can't wait for Saxon Ring. This weekend of MotoGP at the moment just seems wrong, but we've got a nice weekend to enjoy with the family, relax a little bit, and then it's back to Saxon Ring, and the plot thickens. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Just a quick to all the South Africans that have got nothing to do. Saturday, Sunday, World Motocross at Terratopia, just outside Lanseria. Make sure you're there. It's going to be brilliant. The top oaks, and we've got two South Africans, Calvin Flandren, even though he runs under a Dutch license, and Camden McLennan right in there. McLennan fourth in the championship. Come on, we've got to go support our South African boys. I'm going. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fantastic.
There you go. Get down to Terratopia and watch some dirty racing. It'll be good for everyone in South Africa. Thank you again, and good night.
Good night, everyone. Cheers.